I think the cultural stuff is only relevant if that is ostensibly the only thing that you're bringing to the table. And unfortunately for the Democratic Party, I mean, these used to be wedge issues for a reason, right? When people are focusing on that, they're always going to go, okay, well, the Democrats are silly. Why do they care about this? This is like a tiny sliver of the population.
Kamala Harris did not run on wedge issues. This is just a lie. The idea that she was running on like identity politics or wedge issues is ridiculous and ahistorical.
Like every moment that they're talking about that is a moment where they're not talking about like affordability, where they're not talking about like a working class centered party.
Where are the Democrats that ran on trans issues?
Thank you. I love her. My God, you never see this. Thank you. Now that is the response. Let it out. Like just let it out, you know? And look at his face too. Like he's never ever pressed in this kind of way when he's doing his streams. He's never pressed on this shit.
Where are they? They did it.
No, I agree.
Exactly. I agree.
They
Exactly. I agree. This is kind of a wild panel situation here. We got Symone Sanders, who was she on Bernie's team at some point? I know she was on Biden's team in 2020. And then I think she might have been on Bernie's team in 2016. I don't really remember. And then you got Hasan. This is just kind of a crazy frame to pause on with what's the situation here? We got Tim Miller, we got Jessica Tarlov, and these two have quickly become two of my favorite voices in politics right now. In recent years, you know, maybe if you went back several years, you could find, but in recent years, I feel like Tim Miller, I don't know if he's ever had a take that I disagreed with. And Jessica Tarlov is just doing God's work on Fox News. We saw little snippets of this conversation, and I'm less interested in Symone Sanders and Jessica Tarlov and Lovett. But once I found out that these two were on a panel together, I knew that it was going to get spicy at some point. And apparently it did get spicy.
Hi, everybody. I'm John Lovett. We're live at Cricket Con.
Hasanabi is in the building.
Oh, yeah. All right, he's got people. Everybody here has got people everywhere, you know?
We're in the Reagan building, baby. I've co-opted your ass.
Can't lose control just yet. In his 1992 convention speech, Bill Clinton, who is perfect, said of Republicans who were at the time angry about Murphy Brown being a single mom on television, if other politicians make you feel like you are not part of their family, come on and be part of ours. Republicans were the hall monitors, we were welcoming. 3 decades later, Trump found an audience among pretty apolitical comedians and media personalities and their fans who see Democrats as pious and scolding. The Democratic Party is widely reviled. A broad survey of working class voters described Democrats as, quote, woke, weak, and out of touch. Coming out of Tuesday, which was awesome. Semaphores Dave...
Woke Sharia.
What? Yeah.
Woke Sharia, baby.
We're all living in Momdanistan now.
It's just, I think it is telling that, you know, he references Tuesday, and the only race that Hasan was thinking about was Mamdani. It's just... There was one tweet from like a few days ago that I quote retweeted that just really irritated me. It was like somebody was like, whatever the tweet was, it was just like, it was a tweet that was entirely focused on New York City. And it was like basically making the case that, you know, look at New York City. If this doesn't tell you that this is where the party needs to go, then There were like thousands of elections on Tuesday, technically, I think thousands across the country, hundreds of more kind of like more higher profile elections. And for a lot of people, a lot of like super online people, there was only one election that happened last Tuesday.
Semaphores Dave Weigel put it best in summarizing the exit polls. What do you think of the Democrats? They stink. Who did you vote for? As many Democrats as possible. So where do we go from here? Joining me, our streamer and political commentator, Hasan Piker. MS Now's Symone Sanders. The Bulwark's Tim Miller. And the co-host of The Five, Fox News' Jessica Tarlov. Tim, I want to start with you, and I want to just concede that this is like a big topic, and it can be hard to tease out style from substance, strategy, ideology, but I want to start with that 2024 dynamic. You have Trump and his allies on Rogan and a whole bunch of apolitical shows and media. in hindsight, Democrats say, oh, we need Democrats that can go everywhere. They have to go everywhere just like Trump did. But then we look around and we say, well, who are the Democrats that can do that? And as a former Republican, as a pilgrim in an unholy land, who's gone from viewing Democrats being annoying as an asset to a liability, like, where is your head at?
Well, I was happy about the woke Sharia in New York, but you do have to remember that the CIA has taken over in Virginia across the river. So the deep state.
Yes. They're all so funny too, man. I wish I was that funny. Lovett is just one of those people that's like really effortlessly funny. Tim's whole thing is like being super sardonic and dry, and like I think Tim is fucking hilarious.
Establishment is also on the rise.
Big tent.
Big tent. You know what, Lovett? You guys are kind of annoying, and it is something that we're dealing with. And I think that it's important to just accept it and think about it. And the fundamental question that you got to, which was. Okay, well, we need a Rogan of our own, or we got to be able to go hang out with these, folks. We got to be appealing more to the comedian set. And then it's like, well, who would go on the podcast? And then it's like, well, are you available? Are you? Like the list is kind of short, right? And so, we can't create people from scratch, but I think that it's important, when I look back at the mistakes the Democrats made that got us to this place, it's like, Biden wins in 20 when everybody's inside, right? So you didn't have to be out there. And then in 22, it's like, well, we didn't have a red wave. So it's like things are going pretty well, right? And so I just think that there was a lot of just inertia and status quo happening. And a lot of the problems that were undergirding that, a lot of things people were frustrated with about COVID or about the not as fun parts of woke Sharia, right? Like, there wasn't a lot of reflection on that, and I think that it's good to reflect on it now, and I think that Tuesday was awesome, but just because we did really well on Tuesday, because Trump is fucking everything up, does not mean that we shouldn't also, think about how we can continue to kind of expand out and appeal to more people.
Symone, it seems like Democrats are often in a trap, which is Trump or one of his acolytes does something genuinely offensive, whether it's attacking or undermining a democratic institution or going after a vulnerable group of people, and Democrats want to defend those people, right? But then at times, sometimes they seem like they're writing their own version of the Federalist Papers, or they are doing what is then described as identity politics. And so how do you fight back against Trump when he's attacking people, when he's making an issue of marginalized groups, without then being seen by a broader group of being focused less on, say, the economy? Like, how do you square that circle?
Well, I'm from North Omaha, Nebraska. Shout out to the Midwest people in the room. Yes, there are black people. There are black people in Nebraska all over this country, maybe not North Dakota. And so I say that because earlier this summer, a black man who is a Democrat unseated a 3-term Republican mayor in Omaha, Nebraska. And we can clap for that. His name is John Ewing. And John Ewing, I grew up knowing John Ewing. I know him very well. But in that race, like in many other races across this country that have happened since 2024, one of the issues that the Republican candidate tried to pull to the forefront were bathrooms and trans issues. And you know what John Ewing's answer was? Well, first of all, he had an answer. He put up an ad to answer the attacks, which I think is really important. You cannot let attacks go. You cannot allow your opponent, as a former strategist, you cannot have your opponent defining you and you not answering. So that's part of it. I think specifically coming out of 2024, a lot of candidates did not answer the attacks. And some people were just like, oh, no, that's not me. And it's like, well, who are you? But John Ewing put up ads and went out there and did speeches and was on the streets talking to folks doing interviews and whatnot and campaigning and saying, she's doing this because she don't want to talk about the potholes. She doesn't want to talk about the issues that are affecting you. She's want to make up this issue that I'm not talking about. She doesn't want to talk about the potholes. And so I think the answer is not to run away from the confrontation. Like, you're not about to make me, as I used to always tell candidates, don't allow these folks, anybody, any of your opponents, to make you believe that you're for an issue that you've never taken up. Like, I don't know what the hesitancy is from some of the campaigns and the strategists over the last, couple of cycles to just not be clear about what folks are for and what they're not for. Because in 2024, that they-them ad was seen everywhere.
wanting
And
these emails,
black people in
which we haven't
Philadelphia
seen.
told me, the organizers in Philadelphia said that everybody had saw that ad and there was no counter and they believed it. So I do think that, I don't think Democrats need to do a wholesale, like, you need a full brand rebrand, because I think, frankly, the Democratic Party brand, it might never be popular. But what may be, and that's okay, because what you need are candidates who people like and they want to vote for and who they believe in. And if the brand is popular or not, I think that Democrats need to be less concerned about rehabilitating the brand of the Democratic Party apparatus and more concerned about running candidates that are close to the issues in the districts and places that they're trying to win. Tim don't agree. Tim don't agree.
I know. I mean, the brand is boned. I agree with
but
that.
The brand was poo-poo, and people voted for Democrats anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, that says people are willing to support candidates even if they think your brand is shitty.
Well, I think that
I don't know.
I think that's an important part of what I think the dynamic we see, right? Which is, there was just a report that came out that said, oh, here's a set of policies that are broadly popular that Democrats should embrace going into the midterms, and they're pretty moderate and sort of.
Oh, a bunch of these people that lost some races and had one recently put this report.
This is the deciding to win report that Favreau had a conversation with the guy who was like the face of that. And, the report I thought was pretty unremarkable because everything in the report we already kind of knew. Like everybody's been saying the same fucking thing. They're all coming to the same conclusions. Every think tank, every commissioned pollster, every like democratically aligned group that did postmortems of 2024 and made recommendations for what the party should do moving forward. They all said the same thing. They said, get away from the extreme language that has been turning voters off, center the campaigns on affordability. In a nutshell, those were the two kind of broad strokes. There's more granular sort of recommendations that all of these reports are making, all these postmortems are suggesting, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Just like move away from the scoldy stuff, move away from the extreme language. In some cases, move away from, extreme policies, and then center the discussion entirely on economics, cost of living, affordability. And it's like, of course, I feel like lefties are on the same page though. So I don't even understand why they got so upset about that report. I've been hearing the same thing from Kulinski. Vanguard was making the same arguments. When I would do my little debates with Ogre Boy, he was saying the same thing. But because it came from a kind of centrist think tank, they had this like reflexive, they wanted to like push it away. But yeah, anyways.
I for one was shocked when I saw that report. I was like, wow, so do the exact same thing that the Democrats have been doing that caused them a sequence of failures.
It's actually not what happened.
That's good. I like that.
I knew there was no way.
Moderate enough. That was what the issue was.
There was no way I was going to get to the end of that sentence. I don't even know why I considered starting it, but taken. But
Hasan is generalizing too much here, because should the party moderate on this or that issue, that's not going to be a relevant discussion until 2028, when we have an official policy platform from our then decided nominee. And then that'll be the presidential candidate's platform. That'll be like kind of the official party platform. But in the meantime, it's about winning individual races in seats all over the country. And so should you moderate? Should you go to the left? Should you do this or that? Whatever. The answer to that is it depends. Like, what seat are you running for? What state are you running in? What district are you running in? What do those voters want? What are they saying are their priorities? Where are they at on those issues? It's not a one size fits all thing.
When I hear what you're saying there, when I see a report like that, I see a group of people struggling.
And just the idea of like, oh, they've been moderating for the last, 20 years. Of course, if you're having the conversation with a Marxist, they're going to look at Biden and they're not going to see a meaningful difference between him and someone like Trump or George W. Bush or whatever. But Biden did the opposite of moderating. Any reasonable person who knows anything about the Biden presidency would have to admit that he was way more progressive. 100%. There was nobody in 2020 in doing political commentary that thought that Biden would ultimately become an extremely progressive president. Nobody was thinking that. Nobody was saying that. And then he gets in there and he's like the wokest president by far of my life, with the most pro-working class, pro-labor, pro-climate, pro-American families, like policies of any president in the modern era. And so the whole narrative that Hasan just went with there, like, oh, I'm so shocked. They said that the Democrats need to moderate. You mean the same thing they've been doing for the last 20 years? It's like, well, that is not what happened with Biden. You didn't think those policies mattered because anything short of seizing the means of production in your mind is like a grave compromise. So like, I understand why he thinks that way because of his ideology, but I wish that people like Hasan were more objective. The whole thing last week with Emma Vigeland being incredulous at the suggestion that the Democrats have moved left, which came from that report, I think. They've moved left on basically every issue. And in many cases, or in the case of many of these issues, they moved really far to the left in the last like 30 years. And yet in Emma's mind, she was like, are you fucking kidding me? They rigged it against Bernie. They blocked Bernie. You're saying they moved left? Like, there was no effort on her part to actually really dive into that claim and try to evaluate the merits of the claim. You want to gauge if the party has moved left on any number of issues. We have so much like data that we could compile and unpack to scrutinize those claims, and none of that went into her mind in the moment. The only thing that entered her mind was Bernie didn't win in 2016 and 2020.
Against a brand that is in the toilet and a bunch of people trying to win despite that, which is another way of saying we're in a ravine. Let's find the highest spot we can here in this trench that we're stuck in. But there's the reason I think this question is important, even if you're right, like people win despite disliking the Democratic Party, people hate Congress like their congressperson. I do think it's worth asking to what it is like to imagine a world in which Democrats are broadly popular.
How many gummies you take before coming out here?
So, which brings me to Jessica. I'll reveal something to all of you, which is John, Tommy, and I share an office perfectly. And we often, if not more often than not now, switch over to Fox News during the day. And we do because we want to see what's happening over there. But also, it's entertaining. It is. They're having fun over there.
True story.
And Jessica, I want you to talk about like what it is like to be in that environment, because part of what is so fun is their just collective appreciation and shared view of Democrats, which is that they're kind of feckless and funny and ridiculous.
They definitely enjoy that part of it. And I'm so glad that this conference is this week and not last week, because we'd all just be sitting around crying and looking at that memo and saying, well, you know, this is 57% popular, so I think we should go with that. But now we have some wins, and we have this diverse set of wins, so I have had a way better couple of days.
Yeah, they've been almost circumspect.
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes they got a little rowdy, too. But, you know, you can't dispute results like that. You can't dispute a Mamdani win and a Spanberger win and whatever happened in the Mississippi State House. And I'm obsessed with whatever a public commissioner is in Georgia. That, you know, I still don't know.
When nobody shows up to vote, we win.
Yeah.
It's important.
Faux Authentic, thank you so much for the Tier 1 membership for 3 months. Thoughts on their Walmart ad in this video? Is there a Walmart ad in the video? I don't know.
To remember.
But the joy is important to the formula that makes Fox so appealing as a set of programs to watch. And I think about it in context of the joy campaign of 2024 that was not, right? We were being told all the time, like, you're having so much fun. Like, Brat's summer feels great. And I did feel great at the DNC because I thought that was the moment of like, maybe we have a chance. But it was fleeting. And it's always on our side. I think since the 2016 election, it feels like it's forced upon us versus it's coming from within. There may be individual candidates that we're into. I've gotten super excited about people, down ballot all over the place, or, I love Ruben Gallego. Like, that's always fun for me to talk about. But because we have this kind of uniform policy of stay in line, it's joyless, because you can't feel free to criticize somebody that you disagree with, or you're gonna get scolded by this person and that person. And the Republicans, generally speaking, live free of that amongst themselves. I mean, criticizing Trump is a whole other thing, but they go about their business in a way that we don't, and that I think that we're adapting to, at least based on these election results. And Fox captures that there are people who have kind of like a shared core set of values maybe, but they're not taking themselves that seriously. They're not scolding each other. Like, it also matters in the quality of the programming. It looks great. Our graphics are beautiful. Our lighting is fantastic. Are you making a face?
Look, I'm your Fedayeen. I'm your biggest diehard fan, okay? But no, I don't think the Fox News graphics are beautiful.
I think she just means it's very polished. There's a lot of polish with their presentation, and there is.
Look, I respect what you do, especially because, like, if I had to sit next to Jesse Waters and Greg Buttfeld the entire time, I would myself. And the fact that you have been able to successfully sit in that room every day and just white knuckle through Jesse Waters' snide-ass remarks is impressive. It is.
Concur.
Thank you, and it is nice to be amongst my people, which I'm usually not, like cautiously weaving through here. But my point in bringing it up, and you don't have to love our graphics, even though they're copied in every movie and things like that. It's like the official look of it. But even when
The PR people love Jessica. She is a favorite of the Fox PR folks.
But nothing is taken that seriously. And that's not the case in liberal media. And that doesn't mean you're not talking about serious things, but there's this feeling like it is not the end of the world in every topic that you're discussing. And this idea that we can just go and show up in conservative spaces, or come for an hour and you have to be open to those kinds of things, like, doesn't capture how hard it is for people who vote like me and some of the things that I think, to genuinely form bonds and interact on an ongoing basis with people who you disagree with. An hour, 2 hours, 3 hours is not getting to know the other side. Living amongst them and spending time with them is. And I think that's why I'm able to do my job and have a reasonable therapy bill, like not insane, but we know each other like the family that it looks like, which is dysfunctional, but it's still a family. And people who watch the show, and we have 20% Democratic viewership, like, still get that.
Hasan,
Sorry, I know it's maybe not the answer you guys wanted, but
You're not getting a lot of claps because you're defending Fox News in this room.
Well, let me speak. I want to talk to Hasan.
That's an interesting way to characterize what she just said. I don't think he really got her point at all. I think she was making an important point about just like the tone of the kind of media that people are consuming. And she wasn't saying that, she agrees with all of her co-hosts when they speak up and voice their opinions. She was speaking to something that I think is largely true. I mean, he might be making a joke, but I'm just saying, like, I just think it's interesting that was like his takeaway in the moment.
Hasan, about what you just said, but before, I heard something from the crowd, and I think it reflects what they're feeling, which is, well, they're not taking it seriously because these are people that are not appreciating the consequences, or are ignoring or telling themselves a story about the consequences. And I know you know that. But that's a challenge for the left. I think sometimes we are seen as upset or scolding because we're motivated by like a deep set of values. And when you watch Fox, there's a frivolousness to it, but maybe that's a kind of carelessness about what's happening to the country.
I totally agree with you about certain issues, absolutely, and I make that very clear, and they can make fun of me or whatever, but elections have consequences, and we saw on Tuesday night that the American public sees through it. That's the point. Like, people get all hot and bothered about how conservatives are reacting to certain things and that they're being dismissive, but they are the ones that think the American public is stupid. And we're the ones who know that they can see what's going on. So whether you get 90 seconds of talk time or you get to talk for hours a day on your podcasts or on your live stream, all the things for Hasan, like, they're the ones that are doubting people's capacity to understand. And so I get what you're saying, and I feel it, and sometimes I don't like being made fun of sometimes for being upset about American citizens taken into ICE detention and not getting to call their loved ones. But Tuesday night, people showed up all over the country and said, fuck off. That is unacceptable. I gotta pause.
Hasan hasn't gone 17 minutes without talking since 2014.
The stage is vibrating, and I'm sorry it took this long to get to the fact that what we saw in New York on Tuesday in many ways feels like an antidote to some of this problem. You know, Zohran Mamdani is having fun out there, and he's also representing a incredibly enthusiastic base of people who are finding community in being part of politics. And that does seem like something now that is more easily formed on the left. I can think of all the candidates.
Just to clarify, because I think it needs to be said, you can take it however you want to, but this is just the reality. Mamdani had a similar kind of effect that Trump did, in that, and this is my understanding, maybe I'm misremembering the exit polls. Maybe I should look that up before I say this, but Mamdani did really well with voters that are pretty disengaged. Like, he had a lot of support from first-time voters. And that can be exciting if you're turning out a demographic of people that otherwise were disengaged. That could be a really big strength moving forward. If he can keep those voters engaged, and if he can expand his base of support within the New York City electorate for people that maybe voted for Cuomo or even Sliwa, I guess, then that could be a big strength. The problem is that it's really hard to make those kind of voters sticky voters. There's a lot of people that get excited about one particular candidate and then they show up and vote, and then either the candidate disappoints them or they stop paying as much attention because you don't have the kind of national attention that you had during the campaign. And a lot of those voters, they go back to being disengaged. And so that's going to be a big question mark for him and his mayorship. How long is the New York City mayor's term? 4 years. So, we got 4 years to go, but if he can govern competently and expand that tent of support and keep those voters engaged, that would be enormous. That would be consequential. And at that point, you would definitely say, okay, every other mayor in the country needs to take notes from this guy. Literally. Like, that alone would make him so much more influential, I think, within the party, and it would give him so much more capital and clout to farm and leverage to have more influence over the national party's like politics. But we're gonna have to wait a little while to see what happens with that. I think you need to temper the sort of like, oh look, he attracted all these like new voters, like that is something, and we should address that. But we should also not jump to any conclusions just yet about what that means for like the future of NYC voters,
Candidates and campaigns that have been left-driven, that have built that energy and enthusiasm and sense of fun. Brad Summer was an exception. There was a moment where, look, we can all look back and be like, I went full Brad.
I mean, I was there.
We were, yeah.
And as someone who was there at the DNC before I got kicked out, but on the last day, I actually found myself.
Just to be clear, he did not get kicked out of the DNC. He got kicked out of like the VIP like Sky Tower. I don't know why he got kicked out. They made room for, I think, some major publication. I'll make it up and say New York Times. I think he got kicked out shortly after he rolled his eyes and let out a ugh when an Israeli citizen who had a family member that was a hostage still in Gaza at that point, and they referenced, I think, sexual violence on October 7th, and Hasan did a fucking did hold that thing, and I think he got kicked out of the skybox shortly after that, which, you know, fair, probably not great to have someone like that, you know, in your VIP skybox at the DNC.
Feeling a sense of anxiety over the course of every single day that passed, where I was like, why is everybody just like celebrating like we're at the end zone here when it is not a guarantee that Kamala Harris is going to win? And I kept warning over and over again that there were a lot of unaddressed issues that the Democrats just kind of never wanted to acknowledge at all. And
Can we not just be excited we had somebody who could talk, though? Could we just have had 1 week? We were excited for a week because she could talk.
No,
but that was great. So I just give us a break.
No, but the excitement that came into the DNC was actually because for some reason, right? And the reason is because people finally realized Joe Biden was, you know, his brain was leaking out of his ear. I'm sorry.
Usual suspect says, Hutch, if you were in charge of the DNC, you wouldn't have let Hasan near the building. I don't know if I would have banned him from the building, but I definitely would not have given him a skybox. I think what's going on with Hasan, you guys, is the people that are really plugged into politics, the ones that are close to the Democratic Party, my guess is that the people that organize these kind of events and compile the list of influencers that should get an invite or get a skybox kind of VIP press area thing, I'm going to guess that a lot of those people are very fucking busy in their daily lives, and they're not actually watching a lot of content. I would bet really good money that Hasan got an invite from someone who just straight up didn't know how anti-Democratic Party Hasan was. You should not be getting the VIP treatment unless you're there to fucking cheerlead the nominee. That's what all of that's about. And I guess it's like a press skybox or whatever. I mean, like the New York Times, it's not their job to show up and gas the nominee or whatever, but.
And I know there's probably a lot of Democratic Party staffers in here. They're going to get really pissed off for me for saying this, but it almost felt like we had a competent party for once, and they were responsive to the people's needs. And that's the reason why everyone was excited. I was excited. When I saw Kamala Harris choose Tim Walz, when she could have just as easily gone with Josh Shapiro, for example, I was like, oh my God, is this happening? Is there like an actual progressive momentum backing this candidacy, backing this campaign? And then they backpocketed him. And Kamala Harris went from saying that she was going to do price controls, and she actually very decently messaged around that by saying, we're just going to go after price gougers, right, at the grocery store, which was her most popular policy at the time, and directly addressed one of the main economic anxieties that people were experiencing.
I mean, that's not price controls, just to be clear. Of course, the fucking communist gets excited about price controls, but the anti-price gouging thing was exactly as he said a moment ago, which is like, she was going to direct her cabinet or her federal law enforcement to, you know, go after companies that were like colluding with each other to do price controls themselves, to like, you know, price fix things.
And then lo and behold, her brother-in-law, who's, you know, head of legal at Uber, came on and was like, cut this economic populism shit out. And then you had $50,000 in tax credits for small business owners, and that was not addressing the problems that people were experiencing. And I think that we have to do the honest autopsy of this campaign and realize that maybe people were excited for the progressive momentum that they perceived the campaign actually was going to have, and the responsiveness that the
Hutch straight up just lied and kept it moving because it must be nice not having a spine. Okay, now I have to find the fucking video. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with the stuff that he's saying right here. They did play it too safe past a certain point. Who accused me of being a liar? Was it you? Relax, kiddo. You're gonna apologize to me in roughly 90 seconds.
He might have hit himself with strike 3 with this rant here.
They're chanting, bring them home.
You're mocking the crowd chanting, bring them home, when the speaker is an Israeli civilian with a family member held hostage? That is fucking disgusting. And then look at his chat too. Hold on. They're wearing numbers. God, this is terrible. Pepe Frog. Who are they? Pepe Frog. Zionism. Weird vibes. Pathetic Zionist shit. Victim porn. I hope they call for a ceasefire. Who? Question mark. Just joined. Why are they crying? Oh God, I can't handle the nonsense. Fucking libtards. Bro, his audience are some of the most degenerate, depraved people on the internet. I have the Jew with $2. IRI says he wasn't kicked, just big timed and moved. Yeah, that was my understanding.
On October 7th, Hirsch and his best friend Honor.
They don't say arms embargo. They're just APAC paid. 92% dead, according to doctor organizations. Israel is killing the hostages. I feel bad for those hostages, but holy shit, they are so conceited. What? I feel so bad for those hostages, but holy shit, they are so conceited. I'm gonna throw up and scream. Embargo Israel. I can't say anything about positive. Or I can't say anything positive. Free Palestine, free Palestine. Cory Booker must have changed the schedule. You see, he was supposed to speak about an hour ago. I wonder if he did this hostage thing as a stunt. Are they going to bring up a Palestinian person who lost their whole family? Free Palestine. Obviously, their situation sucks, but where's the humanity for Palestinians? I mean, that's reasonable. Chat, relax. You have one guy. Hold on. Does he get banned?
Went to a
Chat, relax. Hold on.
music festival.
We'll never know. Why did Hamas have to take hostages? I don't give a fuck, lady. You're making me want to vote Nixon. Bro, of course he got kicked out of the skybox. Are we fucking kidding ourselves here?
Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. On October 7th, Hirsch and his best friend Honor went to a music festival in the south of Israel. It was advertised as celebrating peace, love.
Bro, that's crazy. That's crazy that the uncommitted movement, once again, making an incredibly modest proposal to have a vetted Palestinian speaker give a vetted speech, and it's always, of course, not happening. It's falling on deaf ears. Ta-Nehisi quotes on the uncommitted movement: as of day 3 of the DNC, the Palestinian permission to narrate was still under consideration. The Democratic Party absolutely cannot maintain this apartheid structure in terms of like literally only having Israeli victims and their family members be held into question while Palestinian and pro-Palestinian people are getting beaten out. Okay, like they're literally the delegates themselves that dare bring up the Palestinian casualties get booed, they get humiliated, they get kicked aside. It is fucking ridiculous.
Like, there's a world where you can make this point without speaking over that speaker. There's a world where you can make these points. I've already gone over why I think it was perfectly reasonable for the Kamala campaign to not want to welcome an uncommitted representative. That's just politics. That's a coronation ceremony. You're there to gas up the nominee, motivate people to vote for Kamala. That's the whole point of the convention. And there's a universe where you can make these arguments, and that's fine. But when you start groaning and hemming and hawing while your chat is posting absolutely psychotic shit, and you're not speaking over like this particular family member, because it just makes you come across as a psychopath, bro.
Okay, yes, of course these people have a right to speak, and yes, of course they deserve to have their child back. Okay, I am not a fucking soulless monster. I'm not a heartless piece of shit. Okay, there is no like boo, like I can't believe she's doing this, I can't believe the Democratic Party is doing this. But the fact that after all of the commitment that the Democratic Party has given to the Israeli government to just basically absolutely eviscerate entire Palestinian families with American-made bombs, that they can't even fucking have a Palestinian person, an individual with family members come and speak in this similar fashion, is disgusting to me. This conversation itself better turn around into one that specifically focuses on Benjamin Netanyahu and his disruptive attitude towards the ceasefire negotiations, or else I'm going to lose my mind.
There was another clip of him, and there was somebody in the skybox with him, and now I can't find the fucking clip. I mean, that was already fucking horrible. Yeah, groaning and mocking the crowd for saying bring them back. Like the optics, the politics of it, just horrible. And I don't even think I should have to explain like why.
And refuse to talk about.
Sorry.
But then the honest autopsy of this campaign and realize that maybe people were excited for the progressive momentum that they perceived the campaign actually was going to have, and the responsiveness that the party finally had to the people's desires, to the base of voters' desires. But then they kind of just threw that into the wind and just kept pumping Liz Cheney and refused to talk about.
Sorry for wanting to help. Poor Liz Cheney.
The idea that they kept on pumping out Liz Cheney is, we're never going to hear the end of that. And Tim is my avatar in this moment because like I'm channeling his energy. Because you had a lifelong Republican, the daughter of one of the most famous Republican conservative vice presidents in U.S. history. And she understood the homework. After January 6th, she did support him in 2020. After January 6th, she committed political suicide by joining the Democrats on the January 6th Select Subcommittee. She took a principled public stance against Donald Trump, knowing that it would cost her her seat in Wyoming, which it did. She gets voted out in, I don't know, I think it was 2022. And then she comes out in support of Kamala Harris because she said that Donald Trump represented a threat to the Republic, a threat to liberal democracy in America. She did not support Kamala Harris because she liked her policies. She did not support Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris promised her policy concessions. It was just purely about like, I'm a conservative, I'm a Republican, I disagree with her politics, Donald Trump is too dangerous, therefore I'm endorsing her. There were two campaign appearances. There were two campaign appearances. Every time a lefty has brought this up in debates with me, they always frame it, and I assume it's because they were listening to this fucking idiot. I'm assuming it's because this fucking idiot repeated that same idiotic claim dozens of times, and they're just repeating that idiot. I assume that's where it's coming from. But the reality is, Liz Cheney did more in 2024, did more for progressive politics than Hasan Piker. That's the real story. She did the thing. She compromised her politics. She compromised her policy positions. She said, you know what? I don't like those policies. I have totally opposite politics, but I'm going to put that aside. She put the country over her partisan politics. And for that, I think she deserves some respect. That being said, I loathe her politics, and I hope ultimately she fails in her political project and her image of what she thinks the country should be. I think that would produce bad outcomes, and I hope she fails. But to what she did in 2024, I think, and to the principled stance that she took, I don't doubt that she probably had larger aspirations. I am sure that she was probably thinking about maybe running for president one day, and she just sacrificed all that because she felt like Donald Trump was a threat. Meanwhile, Hasan was tapping out of Kamala's DNC speech because she called for a ceasefire in Gaza. Fucking ridiculous.
Well, can I just do one?
Pumping Liz Cheney and refuse to talk about.
Sorry for wanting to help. Poor Liz Cheney. Well, can I just do one thing on the honest autopsy though? Because here, I actually we can find some common ground on the economic populist stuff. I think that Kamala should have probably, in retrospect, obviously, had a more tangible message on economic populism. My problem with the walls thing though is that that relates to the topic of this panel is that I think if we're having an honest autopsy and looking back at the campaign, there were a lot of liberals that live on the coast that were like, whoa, this dude can change a carburetor and I can put on a camo hat? Like, he's gonna really, that guy is really gonna connect with rural America because he seems like a guy that really connects with rural America. And people who grew up in rural America who lived in red spaces are like, no, that is the guy who was the PFLAG teacher at the rural high school. And by the way, being the PFLAG sponsor at a rural high school is awesome. That's a great thing to be. Everybody loves that. That's great. But everybody who's from that world did not look at him and say, you code conservative, or you have conservative values like me. They coded him, it's like, oh, you're the nice liberal at the school, right? And so I think that if we're gonna have an honest reflection on the last campaign, the economic populism stuff was a miss too, was a miss for sure, but being seen as being to the cultural left and being out of step with the country culturally on a wide variety of issues, whether it be social issues or COVID or free speech or just being able to chill on comedians' podcasts, like that was a miss, and it was and people misunderstood what Tim Walz was bringing to the table, because he was not able to do any of that.
Yeah, I think the cultural stuff is only relevant if that is ostensibly the only thing that you're bringing to the table. And unfortunately for the Democratic Party, I mean, these used to be wedge issues for a reason, right? These were concocted in think tanks with the deliberate design to make it seem as though there was some significant disagreements between the two parties, and they were created to make the Republicans more popular so that people would focus on whatever, the family foundation decides.
Hasanabi has cracked the code, you guys. What a fucking brilliant political mind. I'm not sure why Kamala didn't even bring him on. It turns out the way that you deal with wedge issues that the Republican Party pummel into the American electorate with insane levels of coordinated propaganda to make people afraid of immigrants and trans people and the like. It turns out all you got to do is just get up there and say, none of that stuff is really important. It's like wedge issues are only wedge issues if you entertain them or dignify them with response. That's what he's saying here. Just like, don't you know that they came up with the stuff in a think tank? It's all bullshit. Like, everybody knows this. Of course, like, everybody knows this. Everybody understands that there's coordinated propaganda pushes from right-wing media to make people afraid of, like, trans people using bathrooms and stuff like that. And Hasan's up there thinking, he's presenting as though he's offering, free billion-dollar advice. It's like, you know what? You just got to get up there and just be like, none of that matters,
Decided was a more successful way to present anti-trans narratives after focus testing their message, and more, when people are focusing on that, they're always going to go, okay, well, the Democrats are silly. Why do they care about this? This is like a tiny sliver of the population.
Kamala Harris did not run on wedge issues. This is just a lie. Trump tried to bait her multiple times into veering away from what she was trying to center her campaign on. Is she black? Is she Indian? She doesn't even know. She didn't take that bait. She just, on that debate stage, she just deflected to whatever. But the idea that she was running on like identity politics or wedge issues is fucking ridiculous and ahistorical.
Instead, they should, like, every moment that they're talking about that is a moment where they're not talking about like affordability, where they're not talking about like a working class centered party.
Where are the Democrats that ran on trans issues?
Thank you. I love her. Look at, my God, you never see this. He's never in a fucking forum where somebody fucking, thank you. Now that is the response. Let it out. Like, just fucking let it out, And look at his face too. Like, he's never ever pressed in this kind of way when he's doing his streams. He's never pressed on this shit. And then look at, like, she's throwing her whole body into it, bro.
Every moment that they're talking about that is a moment where they're not talking about like affordability, where they're not talking about like a working class centered party.
Where are the Democrats that ran on trans issues? Show them to me, people. Where are they? They did it.
No, I agree.
Exactly, I agree.
It was the
Exactly, I agree. Then what the fuck was your point?
Republicans.
But you actually brought that up, and I 100% agree with you.
Okay, good. Sorry, I jumped out my seat.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you, because you said the potholes, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're talking about the potholes and your opponent is constantly being like, but what about trans people? Then they look insincere and they look silly. And
Hang on. Pause. Did he just like try to totally switch gears? I need to rewatch this whole kind of, hold on.
Yeah, I think the cultural stuff is only relevant if that is ostensibly the only thing that you're bringing to the table. And unfortunately for the Democratic Party, I mean, these used to be wedge issues for a reason, right?
Unfortunately for the Democratic Party, these used to be wedge issues for a reason.
These were concocted in think tanks with the deliberate design to make it seem as though there was some significant disagreements between the two parties, and they were created to make the Republicans more popular so that people would focus on whatever, you know, the Family Foundation decided was a more successful way to present anti-trans narratives after focus testing their message. And more, when people are focusing on that.
Okay, to be fair to Hasan, I think he is talking about the people. So just to be fair to him, I think I had the wrong read on that. That he was going, and I don't know, maybe he was going there before she cut him off, but he's talking about the people. And maybe his point was that, you know, she was right to focus on the issues above that, but she didn't focus on the right issue. So I might have had the wrong read there, but for a second it sounded like he was going there, but
They're always going to go, okay, well, the Democrats are silly. Why do they care about this? This is like a tiny sliver of the population. Instead, they should, like, every moment that they're talking about that is a moment where they're not talking about like affordability, where they're not talking about like a working class center.
Okay, now hold on. I take it back. Now that's confusing because now he is talking about Democrats. Every moment where they're talking about that and not affordability. So I think she did have the right read. And then he like weaseled his way back from it.
For the population, instead, they should, like, every moment that they're talking about that is a moment where they're not talking about like affordability, where they're not talking about like a working class centered party.
Where are the Democrats that ran on trans issues? Show them to me, people.
Exactly.
Where are they? They didn't.
No, I agree.
Didn't.
I agree. They did
it was
not.
the Republicans.
But then why did you say like every moment that they're talking about those issues, they're not talking about the thing?
You actually brought that up, and I 100% agree with you.
Okay, good. Sorry, I jumped out my seat.
Yeah.
No. I think you had the right read. I think he's trying to weasel out of it.
No, I 100% agree with you because you said the potholes, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're talking about the potholes and your opponent is constantly being like, but what about trans people? Then they look insincere and they look silly. And there is no reason to betray marginalized groups and decide that we're going to actively write them out of the equation because they're working class as well. And this is something that I have never compromised on, and yet seemingly I've been able to find like a very populist and robust movement in my own audience that
it has no relevance to national politics that you have like a niche audience on social media. That has no relevance to like, you know, I haven't thrown them under the bus and I've been fine. So now he's implying that the Democratic Party threw trans people under the bus. Since fucking when? When the fuck did the Democratic Party throw trans people under the bus, dude? We had a trans speaker at the DNC, for Christ's sakes.
Does not compromise on these issues, but also is always in the affirmative, making the argument that we have to focus on kitchen table issues, if you want to use that kind of language around it, but like center the working class and try to seek out what their problems are, address them, and also make this earnest attempt and show that we are honest about actually fighting for them. And I think Zoran's campaign and its success was a fantastic example of this. I know people say it's in New York, but that's precisely what he did. 5 key issues. He went out, he asked people, what's your problem? I'm going to solve it. And he centered his campaign around 5 key issues of affordability in New York. And lo and behold, in spite of 22 billionaires spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to take him out, in spite of a very hostile media environment, especially leading up to the primary, or certainly after the primary. They genuflected a little bit by the end, but and all of these attack ads, he still won.
Yeah. I want to tease out.
No, it's your show.
I want to hear what you
I am your guest.
God, this is going great.
Are we having fun yet?
I'm having. Are we having fun yet? No, Jessica, I want you to respond, and then I want to kind of tease 2 things out here.
Well, I agree. I totally agree. I just exist in a world where we can't behave that way. Like, not everybody who's going to run for office or who wants to have a voice can build the platform that you have. Mm-hmm. You're ridiculously talented, and
damn, thank you.
No, but even being able to talk that long it's a skill set that I don't have. But when you say we don't,
He said he's a yapper. I mean, I'm a professional yapper myself. I dabble from time to time.
need to deal with this, and I agree with you about the ad, and I remember when that happened. There are people who are running in races where you need to do more than that. Like we were talking earlier, I was over doing Tim's pod with him. We're talking about Jared Golden not running in Maine. And Jared Golden can't afford to win, to not talk about the issues that his constituents genuinely care about because they also vote for Donald Trump. And for some of them, they just want to hear someone say, listen, I want to protect everybody. I'm an inclusive guy, you know, but whatever happened with Leah Thomas, or that's always like the lightning rod, you know, trans athlete issue. I understand your concern about, you know, trans women in women's sports. That doesn't mean Jared Golden needs to say, I want a ban on this. It means Jared Golden says, like the head of the NCAA did when they testified, you're talking about 10 athletes out of 500,000. So it is a small fraction of the population, but I'm not going to dismiss your concerns. And this big tent and a winning coalition across this country has to be compromising about what people need to do to win their races. I'm not talking about being bigoted. I'm not talking about being nasty, but the country operates differently in different places. And I feel like we give lip service to that, but don't always behave that way.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, if the Democratic Party was defined by 5 key policies, okay?
He said like 5 words, and I want to pause already. There are going to be different things. You're going to have a national platform that's going to be largely set by the president, DNC. That's going to be relevant every 4 years. And then you have individual platforms of the candidates that are running for national seats in various districts and states all over the country. And there is going to be it's not like the president is going to say, here's our national platform, and every single candidate necessarily has to agree with each and every one of those things. It's a liberal democracy in a country of 330 million people with how many districts? 400, I'm going to make it up, like 460 districts across the country in 50 different states. And those candidates are going to have to tailor their policy platform to the individual constituents that they are endeavoring to represent in the Congress. And, you know, that is like a really important point. Obviously, Ezra Klein has been really harping on that pretty heavily. And whenever it goes to, you know, the Hasans, the Emma Viglins, the Kyles, they all just insist based on nothing whatsoever. It's not based on any kind of empirical evidence. They can cherry pick a few polls here and there, and they do, to try to make the point. Or they might cherry pick individual races like they're doing with Mamdani. And then they say, see, this means that this is a universal policy platform that will lead us to the promised land of FDR and LBJ style majorities if we just fucking run on these things. He's not wrong in the sense that the next presidential candidate should, you know, you can derive a lesson from Mamdani's campaign, and you can apply that to a national race. You can apply that to a presidential race. But it might not be the exact same policy platform. But his whole brand of politics is insisting that it has to be this specific platform.
Care for all. If the Democratic Party was defined by 5 key policies, okay? Medicare for all, a single payer system, socialized medicine, right? Something of that sort. And a plan to expand the available housing units. I want socialized housing. That is not even broached. That's not even discussed amongst the Democratic Party. I want a federal jobs guarantee and a jobs program to build those houses, right? Free college. And better education overall from K through 12. If those were like your 5.
So these are like, in terms of the issues, maybe not the specific policies, but these are like, and have been central planks of the Democratic Party platform for probably like the better part of probably like 2 decades now, maybe longer. He brought up Medicare for all. That's a policy prescription, but they definitely heavily run on healthcare reform. And that didn't stop after Obama. It wasn't necessarily single payer, but the platform was about like expanding on Obamacare, which is what the Biden administration did, and they did massively expand subsidies, and they incentivized the states to take up those Medicaid subsidies. Many of the states had opted out of not taking them, and I think he got a few states to use those subsidies. And then he brought up, I think, housing. He's talking about like socialized housing, just the government builds homes and that creates a federal jobs guarantee. We're talking about housing and employment here. So, Kamala ran on housing. Like housing was one of the three like main policy pitches that she was, going with. Like she wanted to incentivize the development of, I think, 2 or 3 million new homes. That was a little on the low side, to be honest with you. It could have been much higher. Could have been like 20 million. That would have been better, I think. But she was trying to do a private-public partnership. I mean, she wanted to incentivize developers to do real estate development. She wasn't proposing, the government build houses and just like give people homes. And, employment is always a pretty important plank. And then I forgot the last two that he said. Education. They run on education every time. Hillary Clinton ran on free public education, free public college, I believe. Biden, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he ran on free public college education. I don't know if that was Kamala's platform in 2024, but
5 key signature campaign promises that directly tackle all of the issues that people, the economic hardships that people in the heartland are actually going through, and not just like, highly educated liberals in big cities. Then any moment that these people would turn around and be like, well, what about trans people? They're going to get health care too. You could just be like, okay, what do you not want health care because you think a trans person is going to get it?
Well, I just want to be clear. There was a...
Okay, so he's doing the thing. He's like, he cracked the code, guys. That's how you do it. If you want, all Kamala had to do was just like promise really good policy, and then nobody would be talking about trans people in sports. This is just fucking so detached from reality. If it was that easy to really just squash wedge issues, we would have done it by now. It's not easy. The Republican media apparatus is incredibly robust, effective, disciplined, and coordinated. That's not you can't just get people to be like, oh, never mind. I don't care about Leah Thomas because Kamala Harris promised socialized healthcare and a federal jobs guarantee with socialized housing. That is such a fantasy land. I just don't know what observation he is based. How could he possibly think that it's like that simple and easy to like mute like wedge issue bullshit? Why would anybody believe that it is that easy to do that? It's just a bit silly.
Moment on a debate
Train theory. There you go.
stage where they weren't talking about trans people, but in the Democratic primary in 2020, they asked, there was one of the large primary debates, and they asked, well, do you think undocumented people should have health care? And people raised their hand, and it was used as an attack ad, and it was an effective attack ad. So I think sometimes I agree with some of what you're saying, okay?
It's wildly unpopular at the national level. I think in California, we did, statewide, we did expand healthcare access to undocumented immigrants. I support it, just to be clear. In California, I'm happy that we do that with my state. These people contribute. They are such a crucial part of what keeps this engine going in California. There's a lot of agriculture in California, a lot of immigrants in the service industry that keep that industry going. And it doesn't bother me that my California tax dollars go to expanding healthcare access to people that don't necessarily have papers to be here. I don't care about that. But would I expect a president to run on that platform? Even if I think it's the right thing to do, this is something that is like very unpopular. This is like an 80-20, 90-10 issue. Very unpopular. The idea of giving like your tax dollars going to undocumented migrants, very unpopular. So I would not want a president to run on that platform, even though I think it's the right thing to do. You can leave it up to the states. The states can decide to do that kind of thing, but it's political side to run on something like that.
Dig at small businesses, yeah. I disagree with, because the biggest driver of wealth in African-American communities outside of government jobs, which is why the fact that 300,000 black women have lost their government jobs is a blow to like wealth ascension in this country for black women. is small businesses. And so the small business plan was a plan that spoke to working class Black and brown people in this country who do not work at large corporations but had an idea.
By the way, I think that might have applied also to content creators. I could be wrong. But like I qualify for a small business tax credit, and it's pretty substantial. And it's because of the Trump tax cuts. Like because of the Trump tax cuts, content creators can just shave off like $20,000 from their net, from their like gross. You calculate all your expenses and then you get your like taxable income, and then you just shave off another $20,000. But I think her thing for like, it was either $25,000 or $50,000 tax credit for small businesses. I think that would technically apply to like a content creator. So if you're a content creator that just decided to go full time, and I think theoretically you might have been able to just deduct like $50,000 from taxable income. But I'd have to look at the particulars of her plan.
Wanted entrepreneurship, and then they saw a plan for them, and so it was a wide tense situation. But I guess my point is to Jessica.
Did she just say that business owners are working class, bro? Yeah. What is the first of all, I think the overwhelming majority of small businesses fail. First of all, what is the median salary for small business owner? Is about $75,000 a year. These are people that work their fucking ass off building small businesses. And then the median salary for small business owners is 75 grand a year. Another source puts the average annual income at 69,000 for small business owners, 51,000 for self-employed small business owners. That's this guy right here. Technically, I'm in that spot. Small business owners work their fucking asses off, bro. And they're, these are not very wealthy people. They're just kind of middle income people, right?
What Jessica is saying, yes, I do think candidates have to be, you got to run for your district. You got to run for the race that you're in. I'm a Black woman from the Midwest every day, everywhere I go. Okay, I live in Washington D.C., but I'm Black and I'm bald. So there are some things I think I hear when these conversations come.
Me too.
Up, and I've sat in strategist rooms when they've come up.
Literally, I have the documentation to prove it.
They've come up on campaigns I've worked on, and I hear them on the sets and the commercial breaks when we have some of these candidates on our show. It feels like to some people that look like me that the people within the party apparatus want folks to compromise on issues that for me are uncompromisable when folks say that. And so, like, I do think that if the party is like, look, people need to, I think the answer is people need to run for the race that they're in. Okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean because let's be very clear, Donald Trump and the Republicans, they aren't looking for a big tent. They're like, mass deportation, F you, look at my one good Black person, shithole countries in Africa, all the brown people need to be deported. Women.
I don't think this is a very good take, because it is true that Trump went out of his way to appeal to a kind of latent nativist or nascent, kind of like ultra nativist base that emerged around the time that he ran the first time in 2015 and 16, although the seeds had been planted for quite some time and they were starting to sprout with like the Tea Party stuff. And he was definitely appealing to that base with things like, ban Muslims from entering the country and mass deportation. And, but he was also very much targeting moderate voters. I know I say that out loud and I'm just waiting for the chat to start. Hold on. Let me just let that percolate for a minute. Donald Trump targeted moderate voters in both 2016, and 2016, 2020, and 2024. It wasn't just targeting the base. He was also targeting moderate voters with like the populism stuff. He, technically he lied his ass off, but like he was targeting moderate voters who were opposed to interventionism by, running as like a dove. We all know that's fucking bullshit. He dropped more bombs than any modern president, maybe, per term. I think he dropped more than Obama did. Even just in his first term, I think he dropped more bombs than Obama did. Now we're like, are we going to war with Venezuela? I don't know. Maybe, like we're bombing like fishermen in the ocean. And he ran on kind of moderating the Republican Party's line on Social Security, for example. Like Republicans have been talking about privatizing Social Security for decades. Bush tried to do it, and he couldn't get the votes to actually pass that piece of legislation. And he was running on like, don't touch Social Security. Moderated on abortion, which sounds a little strange because, you know, he kind of was like speaking out of both sides of his mouth on abortion, but he did that with like a lot of issues. So while he was also saying, I'm going to appoint a Supreme Court justice to, you know, who will overturn Roe v. Wade. And at one point in the first campaign, he fucked up and he said, you might have to think about criminal charges if there was an abortion ban. Criminal charges for a woman who gets an abortion in a state where there's an abortion ban. And then he kind of walked that back a little bit. He tried to moderate a little bit more. And after the Roe v. Wade, after the Dobbs decision came down, I think he literally had like different tweets that were communicating like the exact opposite thing. So I think he had like a tweet celebrating the decision, but then he had another tweet that was like saying that the Republicans are too strict on abortion, when he realized how much of a liability that was after they got, you know, stomped out in 2022. Republicans had a really bad. So the point is, like, he did very much aggressively target and try to energize his own base, but he also rhetorically moderated very strategically, because, you know, that shows that him and his campaign understood that they needed a bigger tent than just his base in order to win.
Women got blood coming down their eyes, but like, yay, we're going back to a meritocracy, and that means only white men. Like, hold on, what? But they were winning. And so they didn't win because they opened up the aperture and let people do what they need to do. They won because they tripled down on what they believe, even if what they believe.
Right. That's just not. I'm sorry. That sounds good, and I like it. I want it to be right. It's just not right.
They didn't win because they tripled down on what they believe.
No, they did triple down on what they believe.
Yes, they tripled down on racism.
Yeah.
It was populism, but populism is a thin ideology mixed with a thick ideology, according to Cass Mudd.
Symone,
his populism was a little.
I think she cut him off before he got a chance to make the point. Like, I don't think he's disagreeing that he was like racist and populist.
It had a lot of things in it. Was an economic populist, but populism had a little white supremacy in it, a little racism. Like, Bernie Sanders is a populist in a different way than Donald Trump.
Yeah, here's the thing.
So I don't understand.
Here's the thing, though. Can I just say really quick, though?
Let the man speak.
Here's the thing. Like, yeah, he doubled down on a bunch of terrible shit that they believe that's extreme. No doubt. No doubt. He also was seen as left of Kamala on foreign policy. He was seen as an anti-war candidate. He was seen as anti the Republican establishment on war. He cut to the middle on that.
Yeah, he lied about that for sure.
Of course he lied. That's not the point, though.
A liar.
He lied.
Yeah.
He lied.
This is really a conversation because, again, we have to remember what this whole thing is centered on. The whole topic of this conversation this point of the conversation that they're having is, you know, Jessica Tarlov made the point that different candidates might need to moderate, essentially, is what if you just want to make a concise version of what she said, you're going to have moderate candidates running in moderate districts. They're going to have to tailor their campaigns to the individual constituencies. And Hasan, his counterpoint was, well, you can just cut through all the culture war stuff and you don't actually need to moderate on anything. In fact, you can run to the far left. Socialized housing and a federal jobs guarantee. That's like, you know, that's democratic socialist stuff, right? And then Symone, she pops in, and I honestly kind of forgot what her initial point was, but then she started making the point of like, well, Donald Trump, you know, he won by just, you know, focusing on his base. And then Tim points out, well, no, that's not true. And then I feel like neither one of them are understanding the point that he's making. Of course, Donald Trump lied about it. Of course.
In foreign policy, he was seen as an anti-war candidate. He was seen as anti the Republican establishment on war. He cut to the middle on that.
Yeah, he lied about that for sure.
He's a liar.
He lied.
Yeah.
He lied.
But then maybe our guy should lie about some things that are popular too.
Okay.
Now
you sound like me during the campaign where I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing when you're not like addressing this stuff where Donald Trump can present himself as the peace candidate? That was insane to me. But obviously, sending Bill Clinton to Dearborn to talk about Judea and Samaria, as most people were seeing.
All right,
we agree. Bill Clinton.
That was not great. Just unequivocally agree with Hasan on that one. Not great. Maybe don't send Bill Clinton into fucking Dearborn. I get why, like, on paper that might make sense. You know, he's a bit more he can be kind of conservative coded, you know, like former governor of Arkansas. Dearborn's pretty conservative, you know, technically. Hutch, first of all, you people, after I just told you a minute ago that I'm black, there's a kind of implication there that I don't like. You people really need to read history books on populism, progressivism, and nativism of the 1920s to truly understand what Trump was doing was not moderating his positions. His campaign had all the hallmarks of protectionism and nativism, not moderate positions at all. What I think you're not understanding is that he did do those things. He did very surgically, in a very calculated way, run on right-wing populism and nativism. I don't know if you just joined the stream, but of course he did those things. And he was trying to tease out, it was kind of brilliant, like I think he saw where the conservative movement had been headed in the Obama years, in the Tea Party thing. He saw it in a way that the other Republican candidates just didn't see. Like, those candidates didn't understand the extent of that nativism that had really become emergent during that time. And he saw it as right for the picking, which is exactly what he did. He just went in there and told those people exactly what they wanted to hear. He did all of that. And at the same time, he was moderating away from the Republican orthodoxy. You have to understand that for decades, Republicans were explicitly pro-life without much dissent. They were, very hawkish on foreign policy. The party was packed with neocons. They were, things like propositions like privatizing Social Security. That had been a pet project of the Republican Party for a really long time. So these are really, and those issues are pretty important. I mean, maybe hawkish foreign policy, I don't know. Foreign policy may be less so important, but things like Social Security and abortion, these are very salient issues with voters. And he did moderate away rhetorically. Now, to Hasan's point, he's right. He just lied about what his intentions were. But those are important issues to moderate on. And he did that because, to Tim Miller's point, to Jessica Tarlov's point, you cannot win presidential races by only trying to appeal to your base. And Hasan's proposition that you can just turn other people into your base. You can turn a bunch of conservative voters in Ohio and Iowa or whatever into, you can just easily bring them into the fold by promising really far left policies is fucking kind of ridiculous. There is no historical precedent for that. His whole thing, he's trying to say there is a precedent because that's what Donald Trump is doing, but he doesn't understand why Donald Trump won. He fundamentally just he misses that part.
We're seeing.
I want to bring us back.
Children on their timeline every day.
Let's not pretend like they didn't moderate on things. That's all I'm saying.
I'm having so much fun.
No, I'm sorry. You cannot have a convention where you have signs that say mass deportation now.
I'm not saying he wasn't a moderate. I'm saying he moderated on things.
Ethnocentric nationalist version of this country and say that he moderated.
I think she is I think she's kind of talking past him. I think she's kind of offended at the idea of what Tim's saying, but I don't think she's quite hearing him for what he's saying, because what he's saying is nuanced. There's a lot of nuance to what he's saying.
He did is say, people in Gaza, you should vote for me because Joe Biden ain't doing what you want. That's not a moderation. He had good rhetoric, but his policy was consistent. And the vice president on that debate stage said all of the things that he was saying that he would do, and he has outdone them. He said he was going to send the military into the streets. He was saying it on the campaign. That's not moderation. That's fascist.
She's just dumb and not listening. She's definitely not. Symone Sanders is not dumb. What he's saying is kind of challenging. Let's just be clear. If you want to make the case that Donald Trump is moderated or he moderated on the campaign trail, that is a difficult sell, because Donald Trump is so extreme as a president and he ran on such an extreme platform that it's a bit, you hear that and you're like, wait a second. And I understand that impulse. You kind of just want to push it away immediately. That's fucking ridiculous. Are you kidding me? It's Donald Trump. This guy's insane. But you really have to take the time to get into the nuance and understand that what she's saying is not at all incompatible with what he's saying. He's not saying that Donald Trump was not extreme, or that he didn't run on extreme positions, or that he didn't pull the party right on in a number of ways. He's saying that there's both things happening at the same time. It's just true. But I don't think that she's hearing him. Daz Vidani with $5. Tapping the sign. of voters who thought that Kamala was more left-wing than Trump was right-wing. They thought Trump was more moderate. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is like, thank you for bringing that up. For whatever reason, okay? Now, I'm not saying the American voters are correct on this. I obviously think it's bullshit, and I'm generally very anti-voter. Not a fan right now of like the median American voter. Let's just do the Peter Thiel kind of fucking libertarian technocracy at this point, because I'm just playing on that last part. Not about the voters though. Not playing about that. There's something going on with the voters right now. And it's the phones. We all know it's the phones and the Facebooks and the Twitters and the TikToks. It's the phones. The phones are killing us. They're rotting our minds. Everybody knows what's happening. We can't stop it. We're all powerless to stop it. AI is going to take over. We're all fucked. It's the phones. It's fucking ruining our minds. That's what's happening. Not the voters' fault. We got fucking boomers that are freebasing Facebook like it's, crack cocaine. Facebook for seniors is a worse problem and is destroying more lives than fentanyl does in Appalachia. We need to talk about that epidemic. I lost myself a bit in that rant. Where was I going? The voters themselves told pollsters that they thought Trump was more moderate than Kamala. That was not an accident. That was not an accident. The Kamala is for they, them ad. Do you guys know the reason for that ad? Do you guys know who they were targeting with that ad? They were targeting me. They were targeting black men. They knew that black women were going to be stickier, but they were targeting black men. That's what they wanted to tap into, that social conservatism, and they saw black men as more kind of malleable than black women. So they hammered Kamala with that ad. That's why they did that. And the reason why they did that is they wanted, the message that they were trying to send was that Donald Trump is less extreme. Kamala is more extreme. I am more moderate. So he very clearly, the Trump campaign saw value in at least trying to appear as moderate or appealing to more moderate voters.
He said he was going to deport all of these people in this country. That is what he said, that it's not just the criminals. He's coming for anybody that is in this country who is undocumented. So I can't get with the, well, Donald Trump did moderate a bit. No, they tripled down on the bad.
He's got a tough job. He's right. He's absolutely right. They hate him because he told the truth.
Stuff and had nice graphics and good and smiled through it.
So I want to bring us back.
Symone.
All right.
And then it's all very performative, you know.
Hasan, quick, and then I want to bring us back.
Wait, hold on. Let him make his fucking point. Oh my God. They just, poor Tim. He's doing the Lord's work up there. Got to deal with that rabble. Barabas with $5. That's why it didn't work on you, because you're an educated black woman. Oh no. How far are we going to take this joke? I'll listen. I'm willing to go so much further.
Symone is absolutely right, 100%. And these were things that I was screaming about
You goddamn motherfuckers didn't even let him try to make his point. Like, look at his face here. It's just like, he just made the claim and then they jumped in and they didn't even let him try to make the point. And he just got steamrolled here. I hope he elaborates. I hope he tries to make the point.
Stop.
You said there was also with me that he ran to the left of Kamala on foreign policy. That's moderating. He moderated policy. He didn't run on the unpopular Republican views on foreign policy.
He ran to the left on foreign policy only because the Democrats came out and said, I'm going to have the most lethal military, because unfortunately
that was a really important litmus test. That was a really, but she wasn't running as like a hawk when she said that. She wasn't saying that we're going to have a lethal military force because we're going to fucking invade, China or something like that. We do live in a world where there are serious global threats that we have to take seriously. And that moment in the campaign was such an important litmus test, because if you heard Kamala say, we're going to have the most lethal military in the world, and you had a negative reaction, you're in the you're in like a 5% demographic. Because I heard that, I'm like, dope. That sounds good. I take comfort in that. Pretty sure no one's going to try to fuck with us. Probably a good thing. It didn't bother me. It didn't, especially after the Biden years. We saw, what did Biden do? He pulled out of Afghanistan, ended the fucking drone program, essentially. That, I knew what the Democratic Party was all about. I knew that she wasn't a fucking hawk. She never proposed like invading any countries or doing like regime change or interventions or anything like that. But she said we're gonna have a lethal military and like in unison, the extreme far left all at the same time. We're like, they just lost it. And it's like, what did you expect her to say? Like, we're gonna have a less lethal military. Now I know, been working out pretty well for us, you know, since like Pearl Harbor to have like a super strong military. You know, we had September 11th. That was not very tight, but apart from that, we don't really get attacked. And I think that's because people know that we're going to fuck their shit up if they try to do that. It's such an uncontroversial thing. We're going to have a lethal military. That's a bad thing.
And I mean this sincerely, I don't think the Democrats actually saw the threat of Donald Trump as a significant enough threat, because if they were, they would have locked.
Nope. What an outrageous thing for him to say. I'm just marinating on that one for a minute. Now I want to pull up the fucking campaign stops that she did with Liz Cheney and listen to them talk about how dangerous Donald Trump was, and listen to Kamala just fully clock exactly what Donald Trump was going to do. You know, at this point, she essentially outlined in great detail exactly what he was going to do if he had power. I don't think she missed a single kind of prediction, like, especially on that debate stage. He laid it out very clearly exactly what he was going to do. And he's done all the things that she predicted. She definitely, her and Liz Cheney definitely told the American people exactly how dangerous this guy was, while this motherfucker was telling his audience, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, just don't vote for Donald Trump. For him to say that, I wish someone on the stage is as online as I am to be able to call out the absurdity of like what he said is just so outrageous. Like, fuck you, bro. Fuck you. Your whole brand revolves around making the case that the Democratic Party are basically just Trump light. And the reason why you push that is because you think that this makes your pitch of basically socialism stronger. That's like an essential part of your pitch. Because if you told people that the Democratic Party are in a totally different universe than the Republican Party in terms of the kind of policies that they want to push, if you actually conveyed that, then your pitch becomes less salient. People might be like, well, you know what? I don't know if I wanted the whole socialism thing because, you know, Democratic Party, you know, they have problems, but like seem to be much better than Republicans. And but he doesn't do that. Like his whole thing is about how like Democrats are basically just like Republicans, right? You know, he didn't endorse Kamala Harris, and he has the nerve to say that the Democratic Party didn't quite take the threat of Trump seriously. It's fucking ridiculous. It should make anybody angry to hear that. He represents a kind of politics that I just find so, like, I don't know if he thinks he's lying or if he's just sniffing his own farts here. I don't know if he actually believes this. I just can't believe he gets away with this shit. Like, is no one on the stage going to jump in? Like, Lovett, are you really not going to jump in and be like, hang on, who did you endorse in 2024? Somebody should ask that question right away. Somebody should cut him off right away and be like, Hasan, you're a very exciting guy. You've managed to tap into a really engaged young audience. That could be a really strong kind of tool in the coalition to beat Donald Trump. Who'd you endorse in 2024? You know, I just wish somebody would ask that fucking question. This guy pretends that he's the one on the wall, you know? He's the guy on the wall trying to fucking doing everything in his power to like beat back MAGA. Like in his mind, he's like leading the charge against MAGA. Like he's the figurehead of the anti-MAGA movement. And it's so delusional and it's so self-absorbed.
In and had better messaging overall and tried to at least establish a base of support with counter narrative, with counter messaging leading up to the election, not in the aftermath or not during the election, but leading up to the election, because Republicans, they act as though there is an election every single day. They are constantly on message. They're constantly creating an alternative reality with lies, saying that undocumented migrants are actually responsible for a metric ton of the crimes that are taking place in American cities, when that is an abject lie, okay? And when I talk to congresspersons,
that's what Biden did when Biden ran in 2020. He was still doing that like during his presidency, even though he pursued the border bill with the bipartisan border bill or whatever, he still consistently throughout his presidency, and then like aggressively when he was campaigning in 2020, was talking about how like we need to like humanize people that might cross the border illegally and not assume that these people are all like violent, bloodthirsty monsters, and how we need to reform our immigration system through humane legislation. They proposed legislation to overhaul immigration in this country that was much more humane. They did that in 2021 and the Republicans blocked it. He thinks it's just as simple as like, he literally thinks this, by the way, because if you ask him, you know, let's say Graham Plattner, when he's running for this Senate seat, let's say he gets asked a question, you know, he does a town hall and he gets asked by somebody in the crowd, you know, how are you going to vote to improve border security? He's going to get asked that question. He already was asked that question in an interview with the drop site people. And he navigated that question very politically, by the way. It was a very political answer. In Hasan's deluded mind, he thinks that, you know, Graham gets asked that question. Plattner gets asked that question. What are you going to do to like improve border security? You know, Biden's border policy was a complete mess. So like, how do you plan to vote in order to, you know, move away from that kind of thinking? Hasan thinks that Graham Plattner should just be like, you know what? Don't even worry about illegal immigration because they commit crime at lower levels than native born Americans, which is true, by the way. But like, imagine that's your answer. And then the person says, well, I'm not really hearing an answer. Like, how do you plan to vote on like border bills? Well, no, I don't know if you heard me the first time. They're actually not that dangerous because they commit less crime. So this isn't even a problem. Like, this is not going to work with voters. I asked that question to Ogre Boy the last time we had a debate, and it like broke his brain. He just refused to answer the question. He was doing the thing that Hasan's doing. Oh, you just explained to them that it's not really a problem. Like, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. You have to understand where voters are at, and you're not just going to make people feel immediately better and be like, oh, okay, well, I guess the border's not a problem. It's all very stupid.
Whether it be at the DNC or even before, even after. And I tell them, why the fuck aren't you guys counter messaging against this? We are a nation of immigrants. America is the most diverse nation on the fucking planet. It is literally the reason why we are such a domineering force.
When did the Democratic Party run on anti-immigration? What is he talking about? He's just shadowboxing. When did Kamala run on anti-immigration? We ran on a border bill. That's not immigration. That's not the whole immigration situation. We've never stopped being pro-immigrant and pro-immigration.
Beyond all the other, you know, violent reasons, but like that is one of the most redeemable aspects of America that I personally love, that the Democrats completely dropped because they were scared.
This guy, he is so self-absorbed, man. He acts like he's the vanguard of humane politics. He's the lone guy out there, you know? Fucking salt of the earth guy, finger on the pulse of America. Brave truth teller speaking truth to power when no one would listen. And his profound advice in this moment is, you should be pro-immigrant. Like, dude, what party do you think has been fighting for immigrants nonstop? Like, what do you think DACA was all about? Like, where did DACA come from? DACA is a program that hundreds of thousands, nearly 1 million people qualify for DACA protections. That came from Obama. He did that shit. DACA is a really important program. I've interacted with so many DACA recipients. Like, imagine the kind of peace of mind that DACA provides for people. Kamala ran on a pathway to citizenship. Do you guys realize this? That's been the standard Democratic Party line for a really long time. Pathway to citizenship for people that are here that are not committing crimes. That was what she ran on. That's amnesty for millions of people, you guys. That's what she ran on. She ran on a humane immigration reform and the border bill. I think a lot of border communities and Latinos perceive that the Democrats are anti-immigrant because Obama's record-setting deportations. Sorry, you didn't deserve that. It's come up a lot in the chat. We need a Nightbot command for it. The deporter-in-chief stuff was just, this is one of those things that just, it's kind of outrageous. Like, the deporter-in-chief thing is so deeply ingrained, like nobody questions it. Like, even people that are really intelligent and really plugged in, this is just like an accepted thing, but it is just based on a a total lack of understanding of how the way that we classify deportations changed on Barack Obama's watch. And if you had used the same classification system that existed in previous administrations, he deported less people than Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. But they changed the way they classified deportations. That juiced his numbers way up, and it artificially inflated what was actually happening here. That's what happened with Obama. It's just not true. It's just anybody can look it up. Changed how it was counted. Who changed how it was counted? It was either something that began at the tail end of the Bush administration, or it began, or Obama himself leaned into the new classification because he might have been trying to juice his own numbers up to because he was getting hammered on immigration by Republicans at the time. But I've seen conflicting accounts. Like, I think it started a little bit under George W. Bush, and then they just fucking fully ran with it. People that were turned away at the border previously, that was not considered deportation. Like, if somebody walked from in one of these caravans from some Central American country or Mexico, and then they showed up at the border and then they were turned away, that previously were not considered, I almost said abortions, deportations. And then on Obama's watch, that changed. And so they were counting that as deportations. So when you look at his numbers, it's like, oh my God, he deported like 4 times more people than Bush. But that's just not the reality. He's saying that there's no counter message, which is BS, but that was his point. But there is a counter messaging about immigration. Democrats, for basically my entire adult life, have been sounding the horn on, how important immigrants are to the DNA of America. Biden certainly governed as president as very pro-immigrant. He was a super pro-immigration president when you look at his entire record. But the thing that Hasan does, and basically every lefty that talks about this, is like they get hung up on the border bill, and then that's like the only consideration. They only reference the border bill, which was designed to address a very specific problem with our system. The border bill was not like a comprehensive, broadly anti-immigrant like bill. There was some stuff in the bill that I wouldn't want in the bill, but that's a bipartisan negotiation. The Democrats do counter message. They say these things. The voters are the voters. The voters think that the Trump pitch is more compelling. That's their choice, but Kamala went up there in 2024 and she talked about humane immigration reform, and she did talk about being tough on the border, but she did, she paired that with very pro-immigrant rhetoric.
I saw that one poll from the Pew Center of Research that said that 66% of Americans want mass deportations. That exact same poll also showed that if given 2 options, mass deportation and mass amnesty, that the majority always chose mass amnesty. So why is that never communicated? Because Americans, sure, the median voter, trying to understand where the median voter is coming from is
Bro, she ran on mass amnesty. I'm losing my mind right now.
Impossible, okay? You will yourself if you try to understand what these people are thinking.
You just lost me, Hasan. I was with you halfway through that, but you lost me. But I'm with you.
But what I'm trying to say is this, okay? There are Trump supporters out there, okay, that have been deluded into thinking that Donald Trump represented a change, and obviously we saw that buyer's remorse this past Tuesday, right? Especially in Hispanic communities where they were like, oh, I can't believe that he is actually doing mass deportation. And it's we're in DC, this is a fairly liberal crowd, and we laugh at those people, but I talk to those people every day, and there were people that genuinely believed that Donald Trump was actually excising the violent criminals. And the only reason why people are led to believe this lie, aside from
flowchart. I'm preemptively calling a flowchart in 5, 4, 3.
The faucet of misinformation that comes from independent outlets on the right and also Fox News as well, is because there is no robust response from the Democratic Party that says
flowchart.
That's a fucking lie. That's a lie. Undocumented.
They do call out the lies. They do. They already do this.
Migrants in this country are responsible for.
At some point, you have to give the voters agency, okay? At some point, you have to say, they heard that pitch and they thought Donald Trump's pitch is better, and that was their choice. But it's not like she didn't stress how important immigrants were to like the DNA of America. She did. Democrats do. You're like, well, they didn't do it enough, or they didn't do it aggressively. Da, da, da. And then you get into like Green Lantern stuff. It's like at the end of the day, like the voters hear the different pitches, and based on their own level of being how much they're informed or intelligent they are or whatever, they make their choice. And they decided that mass deportations was preferable to a pathway to citizenship. They had those two choices between those two things. They picked Donald Trump. That was their choice.
For a lower rate of per capita crime than natural-born U.S. citizens are. If you pair that up with documented migrants, it's negligible. It is marginal, and they're hyper-focusing on it specifically because this is a vulnerable population that is easy to target and it's easy to ridicule, and there is not enough of a robust defense mechanism out there. Yeah. And that's the reason why people end up believing this bullshit, and then they get shocked when it's actually implemented.
So I think that's a good point, and I think I sort of agree.
Lovett, you're smarter than this, buddy. I know, Lovett. I know he's smarter than this. The pod guys are fucking disappointing me lately. What's that? I know Lovett is smarter than this. So, like, how does he unpack this?
Shocked.
Like, this is all virtue signals shit, you know? Like, why doesn't anyone say that immigrants aren't that dangerous? What's going on here? Why aren't the fucking Democrats? They do this. I mean, it's more complicated than that. It's easier to make someone afraid of immigrants than it is to convince them that they're not dangerous. It's just easier. It's easy. It taps into more visceral emotions, fear, anger. It's easier to do that. And Hasan, he acts as though it's like, you know what he needs to do, man? He needs to put his fucking money where his mouth is, bro. Somebody's got to jump on this. Clip this, send it to, I don't know, Ethan Klein, whoever. Like, we need to fucking raise some funds. And we need to put Hasan to the test. We need to send him into West Virginia to do a town hall. We need to send him into Missouri to do a literal town hall with, 200 Missourian voters or 200 like Arkansanian, I don't know how you say it, Arkansans. We need to send him into the deep South, Mississippi, rent a venue, 200 people, 400 people. I don't know. You attract them with some kind of incentive, free snacks or dinners. I don't know what you do. And then he can go in there and he can try this messaging on those crowds of people. He can say what he's saying right now. And if it's that easy to just change people's minds, we should see some kind of results there, right? Camera's going to pan out to the crowd, and this is going to be people that are like, with like fucking several decades of deeply ingrained cultural kind of beliefs and political beliefs. And camera's going to pan out to the crowd, and they're going to be like, you know what? He's right. I never thought of it that way. Wow. I'm looking at things so differently. I'm going to go buy a $20 hammer and sickle shirt. Like, just do it. Like, it doesn't need to come from politicians, right? Just go do it. Like, if it's that easy to change people's minds, I've been telling the Democrats for years, just tell them like illegal immigrants are not that dangerous. That's all you got to do. Like, okay, go do it. Like, fucking do it, And then you can do like a survey of before and after, and we can see how many times people have changed their minds. Progressives have done this. I took Bernie into the deep Trump country. Can he win that? Can he win them over? Well, I know that he's done. Like, it's one thing to send Bernie into a crowd, into like, people keep talking about like, oh, Bernie went to West Virginia and they filled out an arena with 2,000 people. It's like, well, what percentage of those do you think are like, liberals that came in from a major city? Are we really suggesting that Bernie and AOC are making a lot of headway in like changing political demographics in fucking West Virginia? It doesn't even need to come from politicians either. There's nothing stopping like the entire progressive media ecosystem. They could all get together. They could build an organization. They could get plenty of crowdfunding for these projects, and they can just surgically target, one district at a time each election cycle. They can go into deep red districts. They can make the pitch to voters directly themselves. It doesn't need to come from politicians. Hasan Piker has a bigger platform than like 90% of Congress. Well, 75% of Congress. They can just do that. They don't need to wait for anybody to make these pitches. Send Vanguard into West Virginia, and he can tell them that their fear is irrational and, whatever. Why does it have to come from the Democratic Party? Like, they could do that today if they wanted to.
I think that's a good point. And I think I sort of agree with Tim and with Symone about this.
Impossible. a fundamental rift.
Because one of Trump's gifts is I think he convinced a lot of people he was going to go after criminals, but he also said at the convention that they were going to do mass deportations. And I think how to bring it back is that is possible because of a big void. So Trump can do a lot. Trump has room to operate, to maneuver. Why? Because he has built an authentic connection with millions of people who believe him, who have his back, who think, yeah, he'll compromise. It is inconceivable that Kamala Harris would appoint Mike Pence to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. Inconceivable. We wouldn't live in that world. But Trump can appoint a Kennedy to run the health department. Why? Because he has built such a credible, loyal following. That because of the authentic way in which you don't agree with that.
Cults. No, it was just
cults.
Upgrading
Well,
you from Bob.
Yes, it has certainly become a cult, right? And then you look at our side, and you find the politicians that have that kind of authentic connection to the voters. You look at the list of leadership of the Democratic Party. How far down do you go before you have somebody that can fill an arena? You have to get to Bernie Sanders, you go to Barack Obama, you go to Zohran Mamdani, you go to AOC. It is largely on the left. That is the truth of this moment, but it wasn't always true. Barack Obama didn't run from the left. He ran against Washington. Bill Clinton had that kind of momentum. He actually ran from the right, but right now that energy and connection is coming from the left, and so Hasan lays out a group of policies that are from the left. Like, I'm not for socialized housing. I'm for building a ton of housing.
Boo.
That's okay. But it is a void that the left is currently filling, that the leadership of the Democratic Party is not. How does Trump get away with all this stuff? How do we get defined as being anti-trans? The other day, Bernie Sanders was asked about the border, and he said, "Oh, country's got to have a border." And that pissed off some people on.
Me too.
It pissed off some people on the.
It pissed you off to say that countries have to have a border? Yeah, take that message into the heart of Appalachia. Take that message into border cities in Texas and Arizona and New Mexico. I'm sure that all you got to do is just get up there and say that, immigrants commit less crime per capita, and everyone's going to be like, wait, I didn't know that. You know what? I don't think we need a border. Test this theory. There's nothing stopping him from testing this theory. There's literally nothing stopping him. He has significant resources. He is significantly networked with enough people that would put up money for him, frankly, to do something like this, to make a whole production of it. Have people follow him around with a camera crew. And of course, these days, things are a little bit more dangerous. So I obviously wouldn't want anything like that to happen to him. But you can go out there and you can try to make these pitches to people, and you don't need to be a politician. And that's, activist groups. They're not politicians. They're just out there trying to engage in the communities that they operate in, and trying to build political power in a very grassroots kind of way. He can go do that. He can go pitch no borders to deep red districts, and just fucking all you got to do is just show them the crime statistics, and they'll come around.
Well, did it piss off Hasan?
I mean, I disagree with Bernie Sanders' message around that, because obviously, yes, nation states have well-defined borders and boundaries.
But my point about it is he can say that.
Bore the audience with
with confidence, because everyone knows what Bernie Sanders stands for.
Yes.
And so when he is asked about trans issues, when he is asked about issues in which Democrats are not at.
Didn't Bernie say something about trans issues, about the trans people in sports? Has Bernie Sanders commented on trans people in sports, or does he always do it's just a distraction thing? I thought even he was like, I understand why people have concerns. I thought it. I don't know.
55-45, but at 30-70, whatever it may be, he can either say, you know what, I don't care about that, I'm not talking about that, or he can answer in a way that maybe riles some of the base, but you trust him. And that to me is the connection between, honestly, the kind of what seems a bit frivolous, are we having fun, and the actual hard work of politics. Zohran, you said, was moderating in the last few weeks of the campaign. I was glad to see that. Tim and I are both people that pushed him hard.
I almost got a t-shirt.
I am to the left of
came
Tim.
out against him, and I was like, okay, we're in business now, Z.
I mean, the reason why Zohran was moderating on, I don't know what he was moderating on. I guess maybe you guys are talking about the policing stuff, even though it was, now that the election is over, we can be honest about it. That Zohran Mamdani did this brilliant thing that got liberals to basically come to terms with a lot of things that liberal media had considered radical, right? because he had a way with he had a really good way of communicating these.
Can you
these
generously
things.
call that he did a good job of listening, seeming curious, and being persuasive to bring more people into his
Sure.
camp?
Yeah.
Well,
but one of the things that he did, but he was still uncompromising. Defund the police always was about making sure that the head count either remained stable, but then we actually turned around and restructured some.
The head count remains stable. What does that even mean? Like, don't hire more police? That is wildly unpopular. First of all, there was no real agreement on what defund the police like even meant. For people like Cinemarxism, when we had that conversation, it was about like police and prison abolition. I mean, they were very marginalized. That was a very fringe part of the left, but there were a lot of people calling for that in 2020 online, or a lot of voices. Per capita, probably not that much. And like the more sanitized kind of like defund the police, or like what it seemed like the serious people were pushing for was redirecting some of the funds that was supposed to go to police precincts to social programs, to send in social workers into like non-violent situations. And there have been various cities across the country that have done this kind of thing, and it was very successful. But people were so freaked out by the phrase defund the police that it made actually doing those reforms more difficult, because it was just a horrible slogan. You know, he claims to be like, you know, I keep telling them to do this thing, and, you know, maybe they would attract a loyal audience like I can find in my Twitch chat. All the Democratic Party need to do is just like, I keep telling them they got to do this thing, and, you know, like, make sure we don't hire any more cops. It's like 95% of the country opposes this. And it's actually even more true when you go into black communities. If you go into black communities, did you guys know that they're even more opposed to defunding the police than white communities? By like double digits, overwhelming margins, like 85 to 95%. Like voters in black communities do not want to reduce the amount of policing that is in their neighborhoods. Daz Vidani with $10 as someone who lives in NYC, NYPD, seeing a reduction in cops would be a huge blow to Zoran's admin. Believe it or not, NYC residents generally like cops. It's why Eric Adams won in 2021. If he actually does do that, if he actually does fuck with the NYPD, that is not going to be good for him politically. And if he's smart, he won't do that. And if he doesn't do that, he's going to piss off his like online base of support. I am so curious how this guy's going to govern. His first day in office, I will be watching that very closely to see where he's going. Oh my God, read his fucking proposal, Hutch. Okay. Oh, hold on. Mamdani, NYPD. I remember reading when he was campaigning that he was not running on defund the police, right? All eyes will be on how he tries to make good on many of his policy proposals, including potentially spending $1 billion on a Department of Community Safety, which he says would give civilians some of the responsibilities currently handled by police officers. The centerpiece of the projected winner's public safety plan relies on mental health workers responding before the NYPD to certain situations. So yeah, this was what I thought defund the police was. Relies on mental health workers responding before the NYPD to certain situations involving emotionally disturbed individuals, like some homeless people on the subways. Mamdani said he believes the current size of the NYPD is appropriate and has not called for increasing the number of officers. However, he said he would instead change existing officers' responsibilities, freeing up more of them to do what they signed up for and are trained for, such as respond to shootings, murders, and other serious crimes. Our vision for a Department of Community Safety, the DCS, is what we would have teams of dedicated mental health outreach workers that we deployed to the 100 subway stations with the highest levels of mental health crises to respond to those incidents and to get those New Yorkers out of the subway system and to the services they actually need. In addition to mental health response, the Department of Community Safety would be tasked with funding hate crime and gun violence prevention programs. Mamdani said he does not expect challenges finding enough people to fully staff the department. I mean, I'm open to this. Like, I want to see how that plays out. I don't know about like creating a whole new department. That seems to be a novel approach. Programs such or similar to this kind of thinking have been done and have been successful in the past, and so.
But then we actually turned around and restructured some.
Defund is very
now who's doing it? Now you're the PR guy. That's the most politically you've sounded.
No. But the thing is, it has a bad rap. No matter what you say or do, Democrats immediately attacked it. They said this is a danger, and it's partially because Americans really love police. It's unfortunate. I don't know how, because they don't do their fucking jobs ever, but
Bro, they're like I understand I understand a lot of the anger that gets directed at police, specifically in the context of when there are protest movements. That kind of conflict between local police and usually younger protest movements, typically when they become violent, produce some really ugly, awful images and videos of police brutality. It's very not that rare in a country this big with so many protest movements that pop up sometimes to find, you know, sometimes you log on to Twitter and you're like looking at 5 different videos of cops that are just using just way too much force. And, you know, when you look at ICE officers these days, they are doing it like, I don't know what their training is like over there. I don't know how they're vetting ICE candidates, but there are a lot apparently per capita. There is no, I'm seeing way more examples of that kind of like amateur hour violent shit, like pulling out your fucking pistol and aiming it at someone because they're recording you or whatever. Like that shit is crazy right now with ICE. But 99.9999% of a police officer's job in a given year has nothing to do with protests. They're responding to domestic violence calls. They're oftentimes interacting with people who are having the worst fucking day of their lives, interacting with their communities. You know, like my sister has been a cop for a long time. I know what kind of person she is. I've known her my whole life. That is someone that deeply cares about the community that she serves, that goes out of her way to actually serve that community. I know her character very, very well. I have no doubt that she is a huge asset to her community. And there's just like, this is the real story of police officers. And I understand this is not like the most popular take online. And I also spent a lot of time around cops growing up. I've spent a lot of time around cops like at family functions. And there's a lot of stuff about police culture that, you know, I frankly don't like. I'm not going to get into particulars because it's like private stuff, but there's stuff that makes me uncomfortable for sure. And that, you know, I don't understand at all. But this idea that cops are not out there like helping people every day, like I think if you want to like, I think like the really online take is like people think that cops are just out there brutalizing people like 99% of the time or whatever, or maybe even 100% of the time. And I think the reality is like the vast majority of stuff that cops do are very real, important services for the communities that they serve in. There are a lot of cops out there right now that are just like helping people. Yeah, there's my Norman Rockwell brave hot take. You know, cops are pretty good generally, I'm going to say. And I think they do really important work. And I think most communities feel safer with more cops in their communities. So what does that tell you about the work that they're doing? If it was true that cops were just out here spending most of their time like brutalizing people, brutalizing their own communities, why do the overwhelming majority of people want more cops in their communities? How do you explain that? And we would have to dive into stuff like, I am very much aware of the statistical evidence of systemic racism. This is something that we don't talk about as much these days, but I believe that systemic racism is a real thing. And I think we have the numbers that can just plainly demonstrate that there's a disparity of treatment. We do need a police culture in the United States that is more, that emphasizes transparency a lot more. And, you know, the good news with Biden was like, because of his administration, he did something with police cameras. Was it all police cameras? He did something with police cameras. And now like basically every cop wears a police camera. And then Biden also took steps to like beef up accountability for police officers. Like his Department of Justice, I think, were pretty aggressively going out there across the country and looking into claims of excessive violence or corruption problems within certain cities or whatever. So he did do a lot of like meaningful stuff, but at the same time, he also funded the shit out of police. He sent hundreds of millions of dollars into the country to flow into police departments. It might have been billions. I don't even remember, but I just feel like this is like, you talk about out of touch, bro. He's talking about he's giving advice to the Democratic Party for how to get back in touch with voters. And he's saying like, I don't know why people want more police. It's like, Okay.
And I immediately attacked it. They said this is a danger, and it's partially because Americans really love police. It's unfortunate. I don't know how, because they don't do their fucking jobs ever. And I wish they would, because I'm not saying we.
I really wish, I feel like that's going to be in a fucking campaign ad at some point.
Cheering for police to never do their jobs ever?
I want to be able to call the police. I just don't want them to think I'm a suspect when they show up.
Exactly. We want.
Look at, oh my God, Tim is just like, oh God. Like, what is happening? Like, part of him is dying inside.
We want a presence of law and order. And unfortunately, in many communities, police's presence is lawlessness and disorder. Now, having said that,
I just, it's like, again, if this narrative was true, you would not see this many Americans wanting more police in their neighborhoods. Like what he's saying, I guess, like if you take it at face value, there's like a lot of, he's essentially saying there's like a lot of cops that are doing bad things. I mean, that's true, but like, are you saying most cops are just out there like just terrorizing their neighborhoods? If that was true, how do you explain those numbers? That doesn't make any sense.
He wanted to not reduce the head count necessarily, but at least like bring in social workers to take away some of the bandwidth, some of the workload from the police. And that was a message that resonated with even Tim Miller, it seems.
No,
he liked it.
It was.
You want to defund the police now?
No. Can I just really quick, because I think, like Symone, I'm like, you're talking, I'm like, yeah. And then you say something like, dude, bro. Here's I think what Zoran did well that kind of combines part of what you're talking about with what maybe I think I'm happy he didn't take your advice on part of his campaign. But what he did well are we having fun yet? Zoran was happy. He was having a good fucking time. He was a fun hang. He came on my pod. We had a great time. He had a couple specific things.
Yeah, dude, you cooked him on Globalize the Intifada.
Well, that wasn't his best answer. That wasn't his best answer. But we were vibing though, and people that listened to the pod liked it. He had 4 issues, like you mentioned. Like it's kind of hard to know what Kamala's issues were. I think if you quizzed all of us on here, everybody would say different things. Everybody knew what Zoran's issues were. That was.
I would get an A+. I'll tell you what she was about. She ran on affordability, just to be clear. It was a housing. She wanted to incentivize 2 to 3 million new home development with a series of incentives that I don't know the particulars of. It was a government subsidy for first-time home buyers. I think it was $25,000 assistance to help first-time home buyers. There are, I think, roughly 1 million new home buyers each year. So, not nothing, but pretty targeted. Price gouging thing, anti-price gouging. The border bill, but also like a pathway to citizenship and like humane immigration reform. Those were kind of like the big 3 things, I think. Now that I think about it. I mean, listen, again, I do think her campaign was too targeted, kind of too specific, too kind of like focus tested. It was difficult to like, you got to like tighten it up, like, I want to give you guys money to buy homes. You should say it like that instead of, we're going to do $25,000 grant for people that make under this income, and in between this bracket, or like, don't get so technocratic and fucking complicated with it. $25K to new home buyers doesn't fix the housing market. Well, it was a 2-pronged approach. It was like abundance build by trying to do a public-private partnership with developers to build 2 to 3 million new homes, I think it was, but that number needed to be much higher, like 20 million. It's not enough to do 2 million, like 20 million. More than that at the federal level. It should have been bigger. So like she wanted to boost the housing supply, but then also provide direct assistance to first-time home buyers. But no, it doesn't fix the problem. Isn't subsidizing demand just going to lead to higher prices? It would in a vacuum, but if you're stimulating development and increasing the inventory, then you can kind of offset, right? As with any subsidy, you don't want the subsidy to be so big that you're like flooding the market and driving prices up, right?
He was good on that. He could go on a pod with me or with somebody else. He could have gone on Rogan for 3 hours and hung out and had a good time. So he can communicate. He's happy. He had 3 or 4 issues. But he also just did like making the practical decision to say he was going to keep the police chief rather than doubling down on the tweets that he sent in 2019 was smart, practical politics. Like you can
I
you
agree.
can have clear left-wing policy issues that people understand. You can be positive and optimistic, and you can also be practical. He did all of that like quite well, actually.
I'll give you, I agree with that. I think his messaging was good on that, and that's precisely what I was talking about. Like, for example, okay, especially not in like the broader population's understanding of this issue, but like in mainstream media and in American politics, there's a major division between how the population is receiving what Israel is doing and how our politicians are responding to it, right? And how the media even responds to it. Anti-Zionism is like a scary term or a scary word for a lot of media professionals in a way that, like, you know, being anti-Israel is not necessarily scary at all for the average person. As a matter of fact, they are very anti-Israel now, and there's polling to reflect on that reality. Now, what Zoran did so perfectly was to communicate his position in a way that liberals understand it. He turned around and said, yeah, Israel has a right to exist as a nation state that has equal rights and representation for all people. That is identifying that Israel has a Jewish ethno-state project, right? That is identifying that Israel has an exterminationist policy on the Palestinians and incredibly repressive policies on policy.
You are out of your fucking mind if you think that Zoran Mamdani is going to change people's opinion to be like a one-state solution. That's what Hasan's talking about here. By the way, you got to read between the lines a little bit here, but this is him like pushing a one-state solution. And I don't know if he is suggesting that Zoran Mamdani is like convincing a bunch of New Yorkers to push for a one-state solution, but that is going to be a fringe opinion, even in New York City, I think.
True for Qatar too? Does Qatar have a right to exist only if everybody has equal rights for all religions? Is that true for Qatar?
I don't.
Or just Israel?
No, I don't care. I mean, yeah, okay. No nation state has a right to exist, including Qatar. Like, I don't know why you're bringing up Qatar, like as though I'm going to be like, oh my God, Qatar.
Well, because there are a lot of countries in the Middle East that you could call ethno-state adjacent, and yet Israel is the only country that is talked about when we talk about like ethno-states. That's the point that he's making here.
Like,
no,
they pay me so much money.
I just say I don't know why that's the only country that doesn't have a right to exist unless they get equal rights for everybody.
Well, because it's an ethno-state.
So are all of those countries in that region are an ethno-state.
No, if you can.
Qatar's an ethno-state, Iran's an ethno-state, Jordan's an ethno-state, Saudi's an ethno-state.
He's never this kind of. You never see this kind of pushback because it's just him on his stream, or if he invites somebody to come on his stream, it's usually a friend. Like, you just never see this kind of pushback ever because he stopped doing debates, you know?
Right. So I'm thinking equal rights for everybody.
Well, because it's an ethno-state,
so are all of those countries in that region are an ethno-state.
No, if you can.
Qatar's an ethno-state, Iran's an ethno-state, Jordan's an ethno-state, Saudi's an ethno-state. So I'm okay with criticizing Israel. I'm just saying
so you're okay. So you're okay with all of these other countries being ethno-states then, and you're not just using that as a deflective mechanism to move the attention.
No, but if you're going to push for, like, you know, equal rights and democracy or whatever, Israel is, you know, there's millions of people that live there, but in terms of like the population of Israel as a percentage of the entire Middle East, what even is that? I don't even know. What is the population of the entire Middle East? Damn. Okay, 500 million. And then Israel's population is what, like 11 million people? Is that right? 9.4 million? 9.4 divided by 501 million. 9.4 divided by 501. That is, Israel is the entire population of Israel, and that's not including Gaza. And if you include Gaza and West Bank, it's, what is it, 3 million more? 4 million more? It's like 1 to 2% of the entire Middle East. There's a lot of people in the Middle East. So if we're going to have a conversation about ethno-states, it's kind of absurd to focus on Israel as like the only topic of they're what are they the smallest country in the Middle East in terms of population?
Away from Israel, a country that literally receives more aid and more political support than from the United States of America than anyone else. As a matter of fact, a lot of people actually get mad about Qatar because now the Gulf leaders have realized, oh, if we give this guy fucking jets.
He's not really like engaging in what Tim said, but I mean, he's accusing Tim of deflecting, and he's deflecting and giving a fucking sermon.
He's going to defend us too. We're oil barons. It's awesome. And that's the reason why it almost feels like people who defend Israel are jealous that like now other Gulf nations are trying to do like Israel style things over there.
I love it. Please.
Is he saying that Middle Eastern countries didn't used to be ethno-states and now they're all doing like ethno-state stuff because Israel came into existence? What is he saying? I don't even understand what he's saying right there.
Please bring us back.
All right.
Sorry. Anyway, my point was on messaging.
I would say this. Look,
he
I don't
moderated the message without compromise.
I have disagreements with you on this, as you know. I will say that Zoran had a challenge, right? And part of his challenge was reassuring a lot of Jewish New Yorkers that are deeply worried about some of his past comments, and which he has, and he spent a lot of time trying to reassure those people. I think because he recognized that there was a liability in some of the ways in which his previous statements and some of his positions were seen by a lot of New Yorkers, which is where more Jews on earth live than in any other place than in Israel. I think it was, true. And he sought to address it. Now,
this is like such an important part. And I think this conversation is frustrating because it feels like they're getting sidetracked so easily. But this is a really important part. How could you resist the idea that a candidate like, let's just say Spanberger in Virginia would moderate on a number of issues? Like he was like very dismissive of the post 2024 election analysis from Deciding to Win, which basically said that on a number of issues there needs to be some moderation or whatever. But the way that he described it was like, oh, big surprise, they want everybody to moderate like they've been doing for the last 2 decades or whatever he said. And this is a really important counterpoint because even in New York City, even with a self-described democratic socialist like Mamdani running for the mayor's office in New York City, even he moderated. He didn't remain like ideologically pure, like even he moderated. And Hasan said he understood why he did that. He thought it was smart. If you understand why a far left candidate running in a D+30 city, if you're saying it's smart for them to moderate in that city, well, you're going to have a much more conservative electorate compared to the entire state of like Virginia. And so that candidate, you should reasonably expect that candidate is going to be probably significantly more moderate than Mamdani. And this isn't a bad thing. This is just like smart strategy. This is smart politics. That's like the overall point of like what this conversation is about. And it just keeps getting sidetracked. Like, how the fuck did we get on Israel? What the fuck?
Without getting into the details of where
I think he had to do that because he's Muslim. I'm going to be honest. I think it was racism.
Hold on.
The liability in some of the ways in which his previous statements and some of his positions were seen by a lot of New Yorkers, which is where...
this is about, so Mamdani disavowed globalize the Intifada. I think he might have even apologized, said that phrase caused a lot of pain, and I think that's what they're talking about here.
More Jews on earth live than in any other place than in Israel. I think
True.
And he sought to address it. Now, without getting into the details of where...
I think he had to do that because he's Muslim. I'm going to be honest. I think it was racism, straight up. He had never said a single thing that was even remotely anti-Semitic, and yet the media constantly kept needling him on that.
I don't agree with that, and I don't agree with that because it's honestly impossible to know because it's overdetermined, right? Do I think there's Islamophobia in the reaction to Zoran? Of course there is. Do I think there's genuine concerns about some of the things he said? Of course there is. You can't tease it out.
What was concerned?
Well, he got elected, so does that argument really matter? He is now the mayor-elect of New York City.
Cheap applause. I respect it though.
So whatever he did worked.
So the reason I don't want to stay on it is because I think there's a lot we can say about it, but what I'm trying to say is he had people that were really glad to see someone who had taken his views run for mayor and succeed. He also had people he needed to reassure who had disagreement, but he recognized that he was in coalition with a lot of people who had different views, including he was asked about Abigail Spanberger and he was asked about Mikey Sherrill, and he said that this is a party that has room for everybody, not just people who look like me. And I think that to me is what I
hate Republicans. If you can unseat a Republican, it's good. It's good in my book. And so, that was my...
This is so, he's just lying. That is a lie. Like, this guy is just, I don't hate Hasan, but I hate his dishonesty. He's so dishonest. Like, he so obviously wears different hats. You never really know what kind of Hasan you're going to get, depending on who you talk to him. Like, of course he doesn't believe this. He didn't endorse Kamala. Not to go belabor the point. I don't want to spend too much time revisiting that, but obviously that wasn't the case in 2024.
Anger and resentment with like the way that the Democrats were representing themselves during the campaign, where it kind of felt like they didn't hate Republicans too much. Whenever I hear Nancy Pelosi say, oh, we need a strong Republican Party, I'm like, no, we don't need a Republican Party. We want to run this country.
Of course, and it's pretty ironic considering he's in a uniparty country right now and just gassing it up like crazy. There was nothing wrong with what Nancy Pelosi was saying. What she was saying was we need a sane, rational Republican Party. That's what she was saying. So she's not delusional enough to think that you're going to be able to convince everybody in the country to be Democrats or whatever party, whatever vanguard party he wants to turn it into or whatever. That's what she was saying. We need a Republican Party that is not a cult of personality around Donald Trump. You know, there was a time in American history. I know. Take a deep breath. There was a time in American history where the Republican Party was not totally insane. There were always insane Republicans in Congress, but the party itself, the party apparatus, like Mitt Romney was not insane. He had policies that I certainly disagreed with. I'd have to go back and look at his platform. I mean, I don't even really remember, but I'm sure he had a lot of policies that I disagreed with. I'm sure he had a lot of foreign policy takes that I disagreed with. He was not crazy. And if he would have been elected, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. It would have led to worse outcomes, but it wouldn't have been like what we're seeing right now. That's what she was talking about. We're always going to have a Republican Party. We're always going to have like an opposition party where it's not always going to be called the Republican Party, but we're always going to have different parties in this country. Maybe we become a multi-party country at some point. Maybe we adopt a parliament structure. I don't know, but there's always going to be different parties. And as long as there is a Republican Party, we need a party that when she said strong, she didn't mean like electorally strong. She meant like strong enough to resist the whims of a fucking tyrant like Donald Trump. That's what she meant by that.
In every seat and be so successful that you have a weak and feckless and ineffective Republican Party that cannot undermine the agenda that centers the working class. That's what I want.
And so here's what I want to come back to.
I don't know if you guys can see his face as well as I can. It's probably pretty small on your screen, but he's just ripping with contempt. What I would want is I want a one-on-one discussion with these two.
Talking about the overlap of the ways in which Zoran built a big enthusiastic base of support, talking about the ways in which Democrats have a void of people not really knowing what they stand for, which lets them be buffeted by issues where they're kind of, whether it's trans issues or other kind of issues where they feel like they're on their heels, and there's this debate about throwing people under the bus. What are the lessons that you think Democrats should be taking from the success on Tuesday? You know, Chuck Schumer was afraid to. This is now going to be the third time Chuck Schumer has been booed at a Democratic event I've been at in 48 hours. And
that's one thing that I'm happy to unite with the left on, the far left. Happy to join their ranks, or have them join our ranks, or form a collective rank. Chucky Boy's got to go. I think it's past that time. At this point, it's time. It's time for him to go.
All right, are you ready? The former Republican's going to praise Chuck Schumer right now. The shutdown strategies worked pretty good.
We're doing great on the shutdown.
Giving him a little claps. Shutdown.
So this was recorded before the Democrats broke ranks and voted to fund the government.
Strategy turned out to work pretty good. Everybody's like, "Oh, yeah. Chuck."
Yeah, we had to drag him to finally do that. He had an opportunity to do it earlier.
No, you didn't. He told everybody back in March that they were going to do this. Like, he signaled that he was going to do this back in March. And Chucky Boy, even though I want him to resign, that I think, in my opinion, that was the right decision to wait until this fight. That was the right decision. I think that was a good decision.
He's there.
Yeah, no.
What is Jessica doing?
Symone, you were going to leave the Democratic Party in March.
Well, you know, about every 6 months, I got to do a gut check. Every member of the 92%, that's how we sustain ourselves.
It's like renewing your vows.
Yeah,
but
very much so. Very happy to be with my husband.
So, Chuck Schumer is being afraid of Democrats being tied to Zoran. He is less afraid, it seems to me, about the young people and people that support Zoran not seeing Schumer on their side. And so, Jessica, how do Democrats confidently assert that we are a big tent that includes everyone from Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger and Tim Miller and Hasan and Zoran without ignoring the genuine and real politics?
Why are we doing this thing where everybody on that panel is pretending like everybody on that panel is for a big tent? That is not true. There is one person on that panel that does not want a big tent, just to be clear. Of
moderates not wanting to be tagged as New York or San Francisco socialists, which is real and we can't ignore.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I just want to say, since I've been looking and reading Are We Having Fun Yet? The last 10 minutes were the opposite of fun. And I think that No, but it's important for our electoral strategy because that fight is the opposite of fun. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen, but when you are the party that is being represented by that kind of screaming back and forth versus saying the stuff that we agree upon, that we're like, all of the candidates that won were affordability candidates. It sounded.
It's just so funny to me, like Miss Jessica, with love and respect in my heart. Not everybody on that stage believes in liberal democracy. Like, just like, you don't even have that central foundation. You can't even all just like go to that and say, well, at least we all agree on this.
Sounded different out of Abigail Spanberger's mouth and what she was talking about than out of Zoran's mouth, but we all got to the place where they thought the Democrats want us to have more housing and more money in our pockets, and the Republicans have been dicking us over with their policies. And so that's where we have to be. I was so excited by Zoran's campaign in that it finally felt to me like there was some Obama energy back. And as an elder millennial who spends a lot of time with Gen Zs, I'm sad for them that they don't know what hope and change felt like. They don't know, what it meant to watch him from the DNC convention through, when he left. Tim's like, it was terrible. But
it was fun. He was good. I got some goosebumps every now and then.
No, I hated the DNC for sure. Like, I'll stand on that.
Yeah, but people finding
Yeah, cool. Okay. Anyways, moving on.
Community, people combating.
Wow, never would have guessed that. That comes as a surprise. You don't say. I had no idea. Please spend the next 10 minutes talking about it, because this is taking me by surprise.
Loneliness, people having shared purpose, getting outside, touching grass, all of that. That's what politics means to me. And you want a great policy agenda, of course, but you really want to feel common cause with people. And you can have disagreements about, various issues, but that is the path forward for me. And that's not going to come from Chuck Schumer. I think Chuck Schumer is, past his sell-by date in terms of leading the party this way. Mm-hmm. But Chuck Schumer, I think that he was right to recruit Roy Cooper and Sherrod Brown to be running for those Senate seats. And I hope that they're going to win. And I feel good about that. And I think that, his Mamdani stuff is about himself. And he's, he voted in the election. He's a Jewish New Yorker in Brooklyn there. And Mamdani got 30% of the Jewish vote, which is very low. He has work to do with the community. I hope that he will do that work. But I don't think focusing on Chuck Schumer is the answer to it. It's the energy, and that there was energy across New Jersey, and there's energy in Virginia, and there's energy in New York. And that's the kind of organizing. It's not, big Democratic energy. It's individual candidates that have this affordability message and are communicating as a naval pilot, as a CIA officer, or a community organizer.
Symone. And this can be for everybody. So Trump is also now giving us a pretty big opportunity. On the one hand, he's been going after comedians, and he's, trying to get Kimmel canceled. He's angry about Seth Meyers every other day. He's tearing down parts of the White House, which was a strange choice, which I tried to walk to see it, and they've built giant walls so that we don't see the construction site. And, Trump is not doing as many rallies as he used to do. He's really kind of ensconced now in Mar-a-Lago and the White House at his Great Gatsby parties. He's tweeting out photos of marble bathrooms. Even some of his top staff now are living on military bases. They've isolated themselves in a lot of ways. Like, do we now have the opportunity to say, hey, they're the hall monitors and out of touch scolds. We're the ones that actually understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And is there a way, is there a way to have a unifying agenda that does what Hasan is talking about, but is one that is appealing to maybe not every single most centrist Democrat, but a broad enough and big enough agenda that would unite, that you would like, and Tim would like, and Jessica would like, that we can get behind?
I just come at this from as a former strategist. I was a comms person for most of my career, and I did campaigns from state legislative races to judges races to presidentials. Yes, I worked in the White House. I don't know if you'd agree with me here, Tim, but I
there's all this nauseating media coverage from up and coming journalists in the last like year about how is Hasan Piker the Joe Rogan of the left? No, he's the Nick Fuentes of the left. That's what people don't understand. Like we're talking about someone who is like actively hostile to the anti-MAGA coalition in this country. And for some reason, man, I'm gonna give some advice. I need these people to be more online. Okay. It doesn't need to be like if it's just 50% more online. I need them to just be a little bit more online. I suspect that everybody on the stage is probably not spending a lot of time online. Like I am terminally online. I am online to like an unhealthy degree. I acknowledge that. I own that. It fucks with my mental health. It's not great. I'm a little bit better now. It's like ebb and flow, you know? It's an ebb and flow. I'm on a pattern now where I'll have like a couple months of healthy amounts of not being online, and then I just fucking relapse and binge for like a week. Blocking Ogre Boy has freed up so much time. And I'm not even kidding. Like blocking Ogre Boy has freed up a lot of time because I was way too invested in that. But I need them to be just like a little bit more online because this man is hiding his power level. He wants to torch the party to the ground. And he's up there like, yeah, no, I like a big tent. Anybody that can beat a Republican, that's fine. You know, like, and they don't know enough to push back and be like, are you fucking kidding me right now? I'm like deep in the lore, you know, like I know a lot of like Hasan lore. I came back, are we really comparing Hasan to Nick Fuentes? I am. Now, I'm not suggesting that Hasan's worldview is hateful in the same way that Nick Fuentes is, but he represents a burgeoning movement it's mostly younger movement that are deeply invested in the downfall of the current Democratic Party. They want to totally transform and reinvent the party into a party of anti-liberal or illiberal. They want an illiberal like new vanguard party. And in that way, he's similar to Nick Fuentes. And similarly, he's getting, you know, they're both getting like more kind of mainstream coverage in their respective kind of spheres. So now you're starting to see Nick Fuentes on more like mainstream platforms. And you're starting to see Hasan on mainstream platforms. And, you know, they represent the far fringes of the country on the right and on the left. And both of them want to get rid of liberal democracy. And so that's pretty important. That's a really important connective tissue between the two. Don't get it twisted. I'm obviously not suggesting that Hasan is similar to a Nazi, but he is very illiberal.
I think that the answer is not, okay, just these 5 things and then da-da-da-da. I think the answer is about the strategy. And what things you put under your strategy depends on what candidate you are and where you are running. Because coming up in 2026, there are gubernatorial races, there are state legislative races. Like 2026 and frankly 2027 are really about 2028 and then 2030. And you have to win state legislative seats. You have to win the governor's races, but you also, you know, you should want to take back the House and the Senate. Okay, and how do you do that? It is not by saying, we only do these 5 things right here. No, it is about what is the strategy. And the strategy does have to be touch grass, talk to people. You need to understand your constituents and your community. So whether it's Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, or Zora Mandami, the thing to Jessica's point that they all did well is they understood.
So she's drawing a pretty stark contrast between herself and what Hasan was suggesting.
What the people wanted. Affordability in Jersey and Virginia also meant energy. Energy prices are way up. One of the things that Mikey Sherrill said that people got behind is that she wanted to declare a state of emergency on energy on day 1. And that is what she plans to do. I talked to the folks whose job it was to go out there and organize African-American voters in New Jersey. And they said for the black voters in New Jersey that they talked to, for them, it was bigger than Mikey Sherrill. They were dealing with all of these issues that they listed that had to do with affordability and whatnot, and they felt like what was happening in the other states and places in this country, voting for Mikey Sherrill was going to keep that from happening because Jack Ciattarelli was very much so aligned with Donald Trump. So I think that you have to just stay close to the issues and the races, but the answer is not the party apparatus says this is, the answer is not those posse papers that these people keep putting out. That's not the answer from my perspective, because that's not how you win races by campaigning, and you go out there and you talk to people and you earn their votes. You do not win a race by a policy paper. And I just think that there's all this focus on how can we align on these.
I mean, we can just hear from Mikey Sherrill herself, who I guess just had a conversation with Tim.
Anything in the I'm always leery of anything in the Democratic
So this is Mikey Sherrill. She just won the governor's seat in New Jersey.
Party that doesn't want jobs, where people don't seem to want jobs, or people don't care about jobs. And I know you're kind of laughing, but I think some of us feel that sometimes, that when I'm talking about jobs, when I'm talking about economic opportunity, there are people in the party that almost feel like that sounds somehow like not aligned with our ideals. And yet I couldn't think of anything more important.
You do need some companies for people to have jobs, right? Like that's, I'm all for going after elites, but like companies do need to exist for people to have jobs.
And need to employ people and need to get money there.
I feel like half of that Pod Save crowd would boo if they heard her say that.
And so it kind of, the way it was phrased was not something, I was a little surprised to read it, thinking, I wonder that's not how I express it. But the idea of going after concentrated power is something that really resonated with me, because that seems to be the fight here. Is the president trying to concentrate a lot of power in the hands of a very few, and the push to really grow a working class, a middle class, and have opportunity for everyone.
5 issues and not a focus on, well, what is our strategy? Is our strategy staying close to the people? It's why Democrats, the shutdown fight, it is terrible for people in this country who work in the federal government. That is absolutely terrible. What the Democrats are doing is at the end of the day, it's going to benefit all of those people because they are fighting, but they settled on a strategy.
And isn't it a good example, though, this shutdown, exactly what we're talking about, which is Democrats chose an issue. There were people, I was skeptical. I was skeptical of every choice. To be honest, I didn't think there was a good option for Democrats. We're not playing with the best hand, but we chose healthcare. We chose it, and we said we're going to take this to its logical conclusion. And it's worked better than anyone, I think, really predicted.
But can I just note, they didn't just choose healthcare. They chose a very specific thing that was happening in Congress, that was tangible, that connected to people's everyday lives, that they could see. And so when I say we don't need to choose all the, like, that was a strategy.
Exactly. No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, I just, we're getting, I think I was having fun, by the way. We could do a whole nother hour.
Yeah, and I think the disagreement is necessary.
I also would say, I'm also like, I'm pretty easy to please. I mean, like Zoran had me. Like, I don't know what more you people want from me. I voted for 3 straight Democratic presidents, and I was going to vote for Zoran for mayor. So I'm pretty easy to please. So you can get me on board. Here's what you have to do. We'll go with this. Some specific things. Have some fucking balls. Like, run a fucking campaign. Tell us what your campaign is about. Don't be a fascist, and be able to talk, and be able to communicate to people and lift them up. And like, that seems like that isn't that hard, but it's kind of been for us for the last 10 years. But like, that's how I would summarize it.
I do think so. We're coming from behind in part because I think we've paid for having, like, if you were someone coming up in politics and you see who the standard bearers of our party have been for the last 10 years, you might not know exactly that Democrats used to be fun and cool.
Right.
So we have 1 minute left. Hasan, final thought.
We got to get rid of the gerontocracy within the party. Down with the seniority structure that we have. We need real whips in the party. This is something that I talk to you about. This is something that I talk to the Pod Johns about every single time. If you have people who don't want to play ball.
What kind of whips?
Like,
I don't.
Not like whipping votes. I don't mean it in the unless it's Joe Manchin, in which case, maybe. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I can't use spicy language here, but we need to make sure that we earn the trust of the working class back. And I think that they have been hyper-focused on culture war narratives. And the only reason why they've been hyper-focused on culture war narratives is because we have not done enough on the left flank to say, no, we are with you. We will fight for you. We're going to make sure that we solve your economic hardships.
And Jessica, you're just going to go back in there and you're going to fight all these people and you're going to defeat them for us.
Yeah, no.
You got this, girl.
But agree with all of what was just said as the kind of final wrap-up stuff. But, you know, this idea, you need to be able to talk. You need to be able to talk where I talk. You don't need to be able to talk for 3 hours with people who agree with you. You know, it's easy. I launched a podcast last year like everybody else. I can get anyone who's going to be running for president to come on my pod. They're dying to do it. The tougher conversations are the
humble brag
ones that we need to be having, because that's how you can get in people's faces and say, that isn't what my party stands for. We're not a communist party. We're not a socialist party. We're a Big Tent part. Sorry.
We're a Big Tent that includes some socialism.
Yeah. A democratic socialist is not a socialist. When they're, I mean, they use these.
She doesn't know. She doesn't know that this guy is like a hammer and sickle Maoist socialist guy. You know, like she doesn't know.
Words interchangeably.
Hasan was pro USSR earlier this week.
We're wrapping it up.
And now, bro, this is so fucking. He's literally in China doing oh my God.
We're ending on a high note.
Are we having fun?
Yeah, that is exactly what is happening. Hasan in China right now is doing the thing that literally the thing that he falsely accused Loner Box of doing in Israel.
Having fun. All right. And I do think, by the way, like I hear, look, what's great about being part of a big coalition is being comfortable with the moments of tension and discomfort.
You know what? This is just cope to me, bro. Like, you invited this guy into the fold, man. I think it's pretty obvious that Crooked, you know, I think once you reach a certain point, and this is just a testament to Hasan's talent and charisma and savvy, is he's built an enormous audience. And just removed from the politics of all that, that's impressive. Like, what his work ethic, the way that he has built up that audience is, you know, very few people have reached that level of success. That is a testament to, I'm not, this is not like a backhanded insult or anything. I'm just straight up giving him his flowers for that. And he has a massive platform now. He is tapped into a nascent kind of left flank that's even more left than like the Bernie stuff in 2016. And he's kind of too big to ignore, I think, in their minds. And I kind of get that, you know, I kind of go back and forth. Like, is there value to a conversation like this? You know, having this play out in public? Like, I don't know. But this is just like cope. Like, I don't think Lovett fully understands. I don't think Jessica fully understands. I don't think that Tim fully understands, but I think he has like a decent sense. I don't think Symone understands that this guy, one of these things is not like the other. This person believes in representative liberal democracy and free markets. This person believes in representative democracy and free markets. This person believes in representative democracy and free markets. This person, and civil rights, I should say, like civil rights. This person believes in representative democracy, free markets, and civil rights. This person is a literal fucking tanky. Like a actual tanky. I think he benefits so much more from the pod bros kind of inviting him into the fold. He benefits so much from them doing that. I mean, it's good content, I'll tell you that. Leave me alone. I'm not going to complain about the content. I enjoyed this this panel.
And disagreement, because Republicans can't, you're right, they've been a little less scoldy, but they also are running to squash dissent because they're not comfortable.
The hate that drives you. I don't hate Hasan. I hate what he believes in, and I hate the impact that he has on politics, and I hope to God that he fails in his political project, because his vision of an ideal system is something that just is the stuff of fucking nightmares. I know that I can't count on him in the fight against like MAGA. He's just not a reliable coalition partner. I can't guarantee you that he's gonna, you know, endorse Democrats in the 2026 elections outside of the niche races that he's focused on. I can't guarantee you that he's going to endorse the 2028 nominee who, let's be honest, is probably going to be someone closer to the center. I just can't count on him. If I could count on him, I could put aside the ideological differences and not really give a fuck. But I can't count on him. I don't think he believes in the same system that I do. Do you think he'd endorse Newsom? I don't know. If I had to bet, no. I don't think I could count on him for that. Because what is also happening here is like he's radicalizing his audience and they're kind of radicalizing each other. It's like this ugly symbiotic relationship. They are radicalizing. It's like a symbiotic radicalizing relationship that he has with his audience. He makes them more radical. They make him more radical because they've grown accustomed to radical content. So then he has to like keep getting more radical and then they get more radical and then it's just down to. And so, even though Newsom could get up there in 2028 and be super anti-Israel, but who knows how radical his audience will be by the time we get to 2028. And, at that point, there's going to be it's like a whack-a-mole, but you just knock down that one anti-Israel mole and like 20 other moles pop up, 20 other like purity tests pop up. And I can't count on his audience and I can't count on him to fight against what I believe is an emergent fascist movement in this country. I just can't count on them to show up in that fight. And what's worse, I can count on him to undermine the only people that are actually in that fight, the only people that actually can fight and stop. And that's disappointing because I feel like people like him could make a big difference and do more to spare us from Trump. Obviously, he's not responsible for everything bad that happens that comes from the Trump administration. But quite frankly, I think he could be doing more. I think he could be doing a lot more. In his calculation, he feels like that would hurt his reputation, I suppose. I think that's what he's calculating. It would be perceived as like too much in the tank and he would lose credibility with his moron tanky audience. And he's not going to fuck with that. So
with discomfort. They're trying to tell people that politics is easy and there's never any time where you need to feel conflicted or bad or that anything is hard. That's a kind of part of the appeal of fascism. Democratic politics can be tough. Democracy can be tough. But we are part of a big coalition and I just think we can all have fun together. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming to this. And
it's just cope. It's just cope. I don't know what else to call that. That's just cope, bro. That's not, you're never going to have this like big tent with Hasan. Like he's not on board with that. He is very much not on board with that.